Welcome, traveler of thought, listener of quiet hours, dreamer seeking rest. You have arrived at a story told slowly, not to startle but to soothe, not to answer every question, but to let questions drift like lanterns on still water. Tonight, we will wander together into the gentle terrain of speculation, where ideas move at the pace of breathing, and the past stretches further than memory dares to reach. If you'd like these quiet journeys to continue, you might consider subscribing, but only if it feels natural, never as an obligation. For now, there is nothing required of you except to listen, to soften, and perhaps to drift. So, settle in. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your breath fall into rhythm with the night. Imagine your body growing heavier, as if it were sinking gently into the fabric beneath you, supported by something vast and patient. Every sound beyond this voice can fade to the edges, like stars at dawn. And as your body stills, your mind may begin to wander, not toward urgency, but toward a horizon that asks nothing of you but quiet wonder. We begin with a question, simple yet unsettling, fragile yet profound. What if Earth's first civilization was not human? What if we, with all our monuments and maps, our scripts and satellites, are latecomers, guests stepping into a theater where the play has already been acted, where the stage has been cleared and the curtain has fallen countless times before? And yet what if it was only ever us? What if humanity was the first, and all the rest was silence? Perhaps it was. Perhaps it wasn't. Perhaps it never could be. The Earth is old, so old that even numbers seem to bend beneath the weight of its years. 4.5 billion revolutions around the sun, each turn marking change so immense it erases the memory of what came before. Continents have drifted like slow rafts across a molten sea. Oceans have risen and fallen, swallowed mountains, laid bare the bones of creatures we have never known. Time here is an editor with no haste, patiently rewriting the story of stone and sea. What traces could survive such endless revision? What civilizations, if they once stood, might remain in only the faintest of whispers, erased by wind, wave, and fire? And so we wonder, could there have been others before us? Not other humans, not cousins of our species with different tools or tongues, but entirely different kinds of minds. Minds that dreamed in currents instead of fire. Minds that built not with stone, but with sound. Minds whose traces would not be pyramids or roads, but something more elusive, more fragile, more easily lost to the silence of deep time. The ocean, after all, has always been Earth's oldest library, recording in layers of salt and sediment the quiet traffic of life. Each shell, each fossil, each ripple in the rock tells a story of what once moved, once breathed, once sang. The land, too, carries its palimpsests, caves etched with minerals, forests recorded in coal, deserts that once were seas. But memory here is fragile, rewritten every few million years. A mountain becomes sand, a coastline becomes abyss. The great diaries of the Earth are never complete. So, if there was once a civilization not of our kind, where would we look for it? Would we find it in the subtle architecture of coral reefs, cities of limestone grown over eons, then drowned? Would we hear it in the echo of whales, whose songs travel farther than sight itself, passed down across generations like hymns older than our entire species? Or perhaps in the clever solitude of the octopus, that strange and ancient being whose intelligence is scattered through its arms, a mind without a single center, a dreamer of camouflage and fleeting shapes. It may be that none of these ever formed what we call civilization. And yet, it may also be that our definition of civilization is too narrow, too bound by stone monuments and metal tools. What if civilization is not buildings but continuity? Not monuments but memory? Not conquest but communication? Then perhaps civilizations have come and gone, unnoticed, their records dissolved in salt. their artifacts consumed by roots and rain. As you let these thoughts drift, you might notice how quickly they loosen from certainty. Perhaps it happened, perhaps it did not. Perhaps it was a dream Earth once had, and then forgot. And perhaps that is enough. That the possibility itself can be held tenderly, like a fragile relic unearthed in the mind. Time has always been an eraser, but also an artist. It takes away, but it also reshapes. It layers over what came before, like a painter returning to a canvas again and again, brushing new colors over faint outlines of older work. What if beneath the world we know, beneath our monuments and stories, there lies an invisible gallery of civilizations we cannot see, because their colors have been washed away, their patterns smudged by the weight of time? Tonight, we do not seek proof. We do not chase urgency. We ask only to linger in the question, to let it rest beside us like a candle's glow in a darkened room. The first civilizations may have been human, or they may not. They may have left no trace, or they may be hidden in places we have yet to imagine. In the end, what matters is not the answer, but the stillness that opens when we dare to ask. And so, as the night deepens, as your breath steadies, we leave this first wondering open, unfinished, drifting. Ahead, we will wander into the oceans to imagine what kinds of civilizations might rise and vanish in the water's endless embrace. But for now, let the question rest within you, quiet and unresolved. What if Earth's first civilization was not human? And what if it was? Perhaps it was. Perhaps it wasn't. Perhaps it never could be. Now, let us drift further. What if the first civilization was not ours? It is a question that lingers like mist over a valley, delicate and shifting, never fully settling. We are used to thinking of ourselves as the beginning, as though history began with us, as though the lights only came on when we arrived. But perhaps we are latecomers. Perhaps the curtain had already risen and fallen countless times before we stepped upon the stage. When we look back into deep time, into the fossil record and the sediments of stone, we imagine we are reading the first chapters of a book. But what if those pages are not the first at all? What if we are opening the novel somewhere in the middle, the earlier chapters torn away, their ink washed out by tides and tectonics, their meanings buried beneath miles of silence? We are readers who joined a library already open, unaware that many volumes have been checked out long ago and perhaps never returned. There is a humility in this thought. For so long, human beings have seen themselves as the measure of all things. We name ourselves the pinnacle, the first to raise walls and monuments, the first to cultivate memory across generations. But maybe that pride is misplaced. Maybe civilization, if we define it not as skyscrapers or satellites, but as patterns of continuity, as cultures of communication, did not begin with us at all. Maybe we are inheritors, not originators. Maybe our hands build upon foundations too faint for us to recognize. Imagine, for a moment, a civilization without monuments. No towering stones, no enduring roads, no cities of metal and glass. Instead, a civilization of sound, or of light, or of migration. A culture whose greatest architecture was not built outward into the world, but inward into memory and tradition, carried not in stone, but in song. Such a civilization might leave no trace that our tools could recognize. Its monuments might dissolve as quickly as clouds. Its cities carried in the minds of its people, then gone when they were gone. It could be that civilizations have bloomed and faded countless times, invisible to the archaeology of stone. Civilizations of the ocean, where water erases every wall and current sweeps away every artifact. Civilizations of the air, where nests vanish in a season and only the echoes of songs remain. Civilizations of the land, delicate and ephemeral, written not in metal, but in roots and dust. If these civilizations existed, we may have already walked through their ruins without knowing. through forests shaped by forgotten gardeners, or across plains once patterned with designs erased by centuries of rain. Even in our own time, traces of humanity are fragile. Leave a city untended, and in a few hundred years vines will reclaim it, rivers will cut through it, and winds will carry away its dust. In 10,000 years, the skeletons of our monuments will crumble. In 1,000,000 years, most of what we have built will be gone. And in 100 million years, the continents themselves will have shifted, oceans swallowing and releasing coastlines, mountains rising and falling. If we would vanish so easily, why would we expect others, older, more delicate, to leave anything at all? Perhaps it is our human habit to imagine civilization in our own image, to look for pyramids, temples, roads, and metals. But what if those are not the only expressions of continuity? Civilization might also be a flock of beings returning to the same migratory path for millions of years, singing the same songs, teaching them generation by generation. Civilization might be a community that builds its structures in living coral, weaving itself into the ocean's slow heartbeat. Civilization might be a species that crafts no object, but creates complex languages of gesture and sound, unseen by us, unnoticed by time. In this sense, maybe the first civilization on Earth has already been erased, or maybe it has never been visible to us at all. Perhaps it existed not in permanence, but in flow. A river civilization whose architecture was always water, shifting and reshaping, leaving behind only sediments that we now read as geology, not history. Or a civilization of forest dwellers, their lives braided into the cycles of trees, their memories stored in seasonal rituals that vanished the moment the forest fell. To imagine this is to imagine a past richer, stranger, more layered than we allow ourselves to believe. And yet it humbles us. It reminds us that we may not be the beginning, only a brief chapter, fragile and passing. And still, the question lingers. If not us, then who? If not human hands, then whose patterns shaped the earth before ours? Could it have been the minds of the oceans, the cephalopods, the whales, the strange intelligences hidden in salt and current? Could it have been the sky-born, the birds, or even their dinosaur ancestors, minds as ancient as stone? Could it have been the land dwellers, elephants with their long memories, primates who are now only shadows on the edges of our own lineage, or even the intricate societies of insects whose architecture rivals our own? We cannot know. Perhaps it never was. Perhaps we are indeed the first, and the world is quieter than we think. But perhaps the Earth has already carried more civilizations than we can count. Most of them so strange we would not recognize them even if we saw their traces before us. So who, or what, might they have been? When we speak the word civilization, most minds drift instantly toward images of stone and steel. We think of towering pyramids cutting the horizon, of marble temples and crowded markets, of satellite dishes and city lights seen from orbit. Civilization, in our imagination, becomes synonymous with human craft, human ambition, human continuity. Yet perhaps this is too narrow, too fragile a frame. Civilization may not belong solely to us. It may be something broader, something older, something that reveals itself whenever life learns to repeat its patterns across generations. Civilization, at its essence, might be understood as continuity of order, a pattern of living that does not end with one creature's death, but extends into the future through memory, through behavior, through structure. It does not need to be written in books or chiseled in stone. It can be sung, danced, whispered, or simply enacted again and again until it becomes enduring. It is not the skyscraper, but the fact that the skyscraper is rebuilt. Not the tool, but the lesson passed from one being to another. By that measure, civilization is not only a human project, it may be a principle scattered throughout life itself. Look to the termite mound, rising sometimes taller than a person, sculpted from grains of soil and spit. Its walls contain air vents, galleries, nurseries, even climate control. Within, millions of termites live as though in a carefully planned city, each chamber with purpose, each tunnel with order. No architect draws the blueprints, yet the mound endures, season after season, generation after generation. The termites themselves are short-lived, but the structure outlasts them, a continuity of pattern that transcends the individual. Is that not a form of civilization? Or consider the coral reef, built not by one hand, but by countless tiny polyps over thousands of years. It grows into a metropolis of color and movement. Fish weave through its corridors. Crustaceans scuttle along its foundations. Each new layer builds upon the skeletons of the old, like a city constructed of its own ancestors. A reef may last for centuries, even millennia, sustaining life, shaping currents, and creating homes for multitudes. Is this not also civilization, an inheritance that persists, adapts, and continues? Bees, too, offer their example. Their hives are not merely shelters, they are intricate, organized societies. They communicate through dances, mapping directions to fields of flowers miles away. They assign roles, distribute labor, regulate temperature, and raise generations within waxen walls. Their honey is not just sustenance, but storage, a way of extending survival beyond the moment. In their hum and their order, one hears the echoes of continuity, of a rhythm larger than any single life. And yet, a distinction arises, an important one. Some of these structures are instinctive, encoded in the genes of the creatures that make them. Termites build without question, bees dance without debate, corals grow without choice. Is that civilization, or is it only instinct? Perhaps civilization requires more, not only continuity, but flexibility. Not only structure, but culture. A pattern that can shift, evolve, and reinvent itself. A termite mound will always be a mound. A coral reef will always be a reef. But human civilizations change shape, invent new forms, remember and forget, adapt to pressures beyond instinct. If we define civilization this way, as memory that can transform, then the field narrows. But narrowing too much may blind us. Or even among animals, culture exists. Whales teach songs that evolve over decades, each generation adding notes to a melody that spans oceans. Birds learn dialects of calls, different in each region, and pass them down. Chimpanzees teach tool use, stones for cracking nuts, sticks for fishing termites, knowledge not encoded in their DNA, but shared from elder to youth. These examples hint that civilization, broadly defined, is not a human monopoly. It is the continuity of knowledge, the persistence of learned pattern, the fragile miracle of memory extending beyond one lifespan. To think this way is to soften our own pride. We are not the only beings who build, not the only ones who teach, not the only ones who carry memory forward. Civilization may be a spectrum, with instinct at one end and culture at the other, and countless creatures scattered along the line. Ours may be the loudest civilization, the one most visible in stone and metal, but it is not necessarily the first, nor the only. Perhaps then, the question is not whether non-human civilizations exist, but how they differ. Some are built in soil, some in song, some in coral, some in flight. They may not last as long as pyramids, but in their time they are no less real. If we widen our frame, we may find that Earth has always been crowded with civilizations, layered, simultaneous, overlapping, rising and falling like tides. And yet, one wonders, among all these examples, is there one that might have risen higher, one that could have reached beyond instinct, beyond ritual, into the kind of continuity that shapes not only survival, but imagination? Could there have been a civilization that dreamed, that speculated, that wondered about its own place long before we did? We cannot know for certain, but we can linger in the thought, gently, without demand for proof. For to broaden the meaning of civilization is to prepare ourselves for wonder, to ready our minds for the possibility that others walked, or swam, or flew paths we cannot trace. And so, the question expands. Civilization without humans is possible. But who were these contenders? Who carried memory not only in blood, but in culture? Who left behind no monuments, and yet may have lived in patterns of civilization so fleeting, so fragile, that time itself erased them? Let us turn now, with quiet curiosity, toward those possible architects. For if the first civilization was not ours, then perhaps it belonged to the oceans. Time is often imagined as a line, a steady progression from beginning to end. But when it comes to Earth, time behaves more like a restless editor, always revising, always cutting, always rewriting the manuscript beneath our feet. If civilizations once rose and fell before us, whether in human form or something entirely different, the evidence of their existence would not be immortal. It would be fragile, vulnerable, and likely erased. The planet itself is not a passive archive. It is an active storyteller, and its habit is to overwrite. Consider the surface of the Earth as a kind of palimpsest, an ancient parchment used and reused, words scraped away, and new lines inscribed atop the old. What was once written in bold strokes, mountains, forests, rivers, even cities, can be scoured clean, leaving only faint hints that anything was there at all. Erosion, flood, fire, wind, and ice act as erasers, softening sharp edges, scattering fragments, returning even the most durable of structures to dust. A temple of stone may last a few thousand years if tended, a few more if abandoned, but in the measureless span of geological time. Even stone is temporary. The oceans are perhaps the most thorough custodians of forgetting. The seafloor swallows what enters it, burying traces beneath layers of sediment that grow heavier with each century. Wooden ships disintegrate, metal corrodes, coral claims whatever it can. A coastline that once bustled with life may be submerged entirely as ice melts and seas rise, leaving little more than broken pottery scattered far below the waves. If a civilization built its world near the water, much of it might now be hidden, drowned, transformed into unrecognizable fragments, cloaked by sand and tide. And then there is the slow but relentless churn of tectonic plates. Entire continents drift, collide, submerge. Rocks that once lay upon the surface are pressed downward into the furnace of the mantle, melted and remade, their histories obliterated. A structure grander than any we know, if left in the wrong place, could be ground down into magma and pushed up again centuries later as a mountain range with no trace of the original design. In this way, Earth is not a museum of permanence. It is a living body, and its skin is constantly healing, covering its scars, reshaping its features. Even our own creations, so seemingly enduring, will one day be subject to this erasure. The tallest skyscrapers will fall. The pyramids will crumble. Our satellites will burn or drift silently until their orbits decay. Give the Earth 1,000,000 years, and the signs of our existence may shrink to little more than odd mineral concentrations, a thin layer of plastics, a faint radio echo fading into cosmic static. If this is the destiny of human civilization, why would we expect earlier, stranger civilizations, whether animal, oceanic, or otherwise, to have left their marks in forms we could easily find? And yet, not everything vanishes entirely. Some traces endure, though they may be disguised. A fossil is a memory etched in stone, not the creature itself, but a cast, a shadow, a translation into mineral language. Ancient riverbeds are visible from orbit, though the rivers themselves dried long ago. A city lost to the desert may remain only as a faint outline in the sand, detectable by satellite imaging but invisible to the eye on the ground. The Earth erases, but sometimes it leaves ghost letters beneath the overwriting, faint whispers waiting for those who know how to look. Imagine, then, if there were once civilizations not human. Their monuments might not resemble ours. They may not have left skyscrapers or carved statues. Their traces might not even be recognizable as artificial. Perhaps their legacy lies hidden in unusual geological formations, in unexplained concentrations of minerals, in peculiar fossilized arrangements. We might walk past such signs every day, dismissing them as natural quirks, never pausing to ask whether they were once deliberate. This is the challenge. The difference between what is erased and what is only disguised. Earth's editing hand is thorough, but it does not always obliterate. Sometimes it folds, sometimes it conceals, sometimes it layers new meaning atop the old. A coastline may rise again as a plateau. A seabed may become a mountain. What lies within these transformations could be more than chance. It could be memory wearing a mask. So when we ask, if there were civilizations before us, why don't we see them? The answer may simply be because time has hidden them. Not cruelly, not purposefully, but naturally, through the same cycles that create mountains, carve valleys, and stir oceans. We are reading a manuscript that has been written upon countless times, each version erasing most of what came before. Only the faintest of echoes remain. And yet those echoes may be enough. A strange anomaly in the rocks. A fossil pattern that defies expectation. A formation that seems too ordered for chance. They may be fragments, partial sentences in Earth's long book, waiting for us to notice. If there was once a civilization not our own, its story may not be gone entirely. It may be simply buried, muffled, awaiting rediscovery in places we have not yet searched deeply enough. Which leads us naturally to the sea. For if time is the great eraser, the oceans are both its canvas and its vault. Most of Earth's surface lies beneath their depths, dark and unexplored. If there are hidden traces of civilizations erased from the land, perhaps they are waiting there, beneath the shifting tides and silt, where memory lingers longer than we imagine. So let us now turn our attention toward the oceans, where the earth hides both its forgetting and its remembering, and ask, what secrets might still rest beneath the waves? It is here, in the quiet after the asking, that we can let the question rest for a while. What if the first civilization was not human? What if it rose, flourished, and disappeared before we even arrived? What if the world we think of as ours is only the latest chapter in a book already half written? Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it never could be. Such thoughts are not meant to startle, only to soften. They are less like alarms and more like drifting lanterns floating in the stillness of night. They do not demand an answer. They simply illuminate possibilities, showing that the paths of imagination are many, and that all of them are worth wandering. To sit with a question is its own kind of peace, because the world is not diminished by mystery. It is deepened by it. We so often seek certainty, proof, evidence, the comfort of a final conclusion. But tonight, in this slow unfolding, there is no need for sharp edges or definite lines. We do not need to know. We only need to wonder. And wondering is softer than knowing. Wondering asks nothing of us but patience. The patience to let the mind float as the body grows heavy with rest. Think of the question as a curtain drawn gently across a window. The scene outside may be hidden for now, but the glow of what lies beyond still filters in, diffused, calming. Civilization without humans. It could have been written, or it could have been erased before its story reached us. We cannot say for certain, but perhaps, as we have seen, the Earth is not a perfect eraser. It hides as much as it erases, conceals as much as it reveals. Somewhere, faint marks might remain, scraps of a script left beneath layers of time. And if that is true, then the search is not over. It is only paused, waiting for us to turn the page. For tonight, though, we leave the question open. We let it hover in the stillness, neither resolved nor abandoned, simply alive in the gentle rhythm of breath and thought. Maybe humans were first. Maybe humans were latecomers. Maybe we are not even the central characters in this long story, but only the latest audience invited to sit in the theater of Earth, watching a play that began long before we arrived. This is not a frightening thought. It is a humbling one, a calming one. Because if civilizations have come and gone before, and if more will come after us, then we are part of something larger, something cyclical, something endlessly creative. The Earth is not stingy with life. It is generous. It is an artist who paints with countless brushes. Each civilization, human or not, only one stroke in a vast canvas that stretches beyond our comprehension. And you, listening here, are also part of that painting. Your life, your thoughts, even your wondering tonight are threads woven into the larger fabric. You do not need to solve the mystery to belong within it. You already do. You are enough as you are. A traveler pausing to rest within the endless unfolding of time. So let the question settle softly now. Let it become like background music, a distant tide you can hear but no longer strain to follow. Rest in the not knowing. Rest in the possibility. Rest in the assurance that mystery can be a pillow as much as a puzzle. Because the night is long, and the story is longer still. Tomorrow, or in some later moment, we may pick it up again and follow its threads further. But for now, we place a gentle bookmark, a quiet pause, before we drift deeper. And when we lift our eyes again, the path ahead will take us somewhere new. We will no longer be standing on land, tracing faint outlines in stone. Instead, we will slip beneath the waves, into the vast archive that is the ocean. For if time erases, the sea sometimes preserves. What if the oceans themselves were once cities, holding memories not built of stone, but of coral, shell, and current? That is where we will go next. For tonight, let the curtain fall gently. Let the question rest in silence, and let yourself drift further into calm. The story will be here when you return. Now, let us drift further, carrying the thought of forgotten worlds into the rolling blue expanse that covers most of our planet. If the land is a palimpsest, rewritten and erased by wind and stone, then the oceans are a vast manuscript still turning its pages. They are not empty voids, not silent spaces, but living networks of exchange, patterns upon patterns woven through water. In a way, they were the first cities, though no stone was laid, and no fire was ever kindled. Consider a coral reef. From above it seems like a shimmering blur, but within it is a metropolis of astonishing scale. Each coral polyp, tiny and unassuming, contributes to the slow construction of towering structures that endure for centuries. Fish weave through its streets like citizens. Crabs and eels find their hidden quarters. Algae, plankton, and an endless cascade of drifting nutrients flow through like trade routes, sustaining all who pass. The reef has no palace, no parliament, yet it organizes itself into something greater than the sum of its parts. To swim through such a place is to walk through an underwater city, humming with quiet order, shaped not by design, but by cooperation. And reefs are only one form of these aqueous settlements. Kelp forests sway like cathedrals built of living pillars, each frond offering shelter, each shadow a corridor where life hides and thrives. Estuaries breathe with the tides, creating crossroads where fresh and salt waters meet, like marketplaces where two civilizations exchange their goods. Even the open ocean, which to us appears empty, is threaded with invisible highways of migration. The long journeys of tuna, the steady paths of sea turtles, the looping circuits of sharks. Each route is ancient, remembered not by maps, but by instinct, by the quiet logic of life finding its way. If civilization means continuity, patterns that endure across generations, then the seas have been civilizing themselves for far longer than we. Long before humans raised walls, the oceans raised barriers of salt and current, shaping where creatures could move, trade, and thrive. Long before our voices spoke across valleys, whales were singing across entire oceans, weaving threads of sound into communities that stretched beyond the horizon. Whale song is perhaps one of the most haunting reminders that intelligence and communication need not look like ours. Low, resonant calls can travel thousands of miles beneath the surface, carrying with them messages we have only begun to decipher. Some patterns shift with the years, like dialects evolving. Others repeat, like chants remembered through generations. To float in that soundscape is to overhear a conversation that may have begun long before human speech, and which will likely continue long after. Perhaps this too is a kind of city, one built not of coral or kelp, but of sound, where information flows across vast distances, binding individuals into a culture we cannot fully perceive. And what of dolphins, whose clicks and whistles form intricate codes? What of octopuses, whose bodies themselves become language, changing color and texture in fluid bursts of meaning? These are not words in the way we know them, but signals, symbols, and stories carried across water and skin. It might be that the first libraries were not carved into clay or etched into stone, but sung into the sea, painted upon flesh, or flickered through bioluminescent light in the dark. If so, then the ocean has been telling itself stories for longer than our species has drawn breath. One might wonder, could such systems be called civilizations? They lack skyscrapers, but they endure. They lack roads, yet they connect. They lack monuments, yet their patterns repeat across centuries. Perhaps we have been too narrow in our definitions, too eager to equate civilization with walls and fire. The sea shows us another model, one without permanence, yet no less real. A civilization of flow rather than foundation. Imagine standing at the shore, looking out not at emptiness, but at a skyline invisible to us, reefs rising like towers, whale migrations crossing like boulevards, sonar pulses glowing like lanterns in the dark. The ocean itself becomes the architecture. Its currents are streets, its reefs are plazas, its soundscapes are forums. To live within it is to be part of a city without borders, where the boundaries are drawn not by walls but by tides. And yet, because water reshapes constantly, these cities leave few enduring marks. Coral may calcify into stone, but even that crumbles with time. Whale songs vanish into silence. The kelp forest withers when currents shift. A city on land might leave ruins for millennia, but an oceanic city dissolves as swiftly as breath upon a mirror. Perhaps that is why we struggle to see them as civilizations. They do not persist in the ways we expect. But persistence is not the only measure of significance. Fleeting beauty, too, is real. If you are drifting, imagine this: the ocean at night, utterly black, yet glowing with pinpricks of bioluminescence. Creatures flashing signals, shimmering for a moment, then fading into darkness. A conversation of light that flickers across the deep, like lanterns hung in windows of invisible houses. For a moment, the water is a city of stars. Then it is gone, and yet the memory of it remains. So perhaps the oceans were the first cities, not in the sense of monuments, but in the sense of networks, places where beings gathered, communicated, built, remembered, even if those memories did not last in stone. Perhaps the sea itself is a civilization, one we have been too slow to recognize, one that was ancient long before we called ourselves modern. And among the ocean's citizens, some are more mysterious than others. Some appear to walk the line between instinct and culture, between fleeting brilliance and lasting knowledge. In these waters live creatures whose intelligence seems startlingly close to our own, though expressed in forms so alien we can only guess at its contours. Soon, we will turn to them, For among the citizens of these fluid cities, one creature stands apart, shimmering like a riddle in the dark: the octopus. From here, the story drifts inward to one of the most enigmatic beings the ocean has ever shaped. Among coral metropolises and whale highways, one creature seems to carry with it a spark of something uncanny, something that makes us pause and wonder whether we are gazing into a reflection of another kind of intelligence altogether. The octopus, soft-bodied and fleeting, is in many ways as alien as any visitor from another world. Yet it shares the same seas that cradle us. Its mind does not sit solely in its head. Instead, thought is distributed, woven into its very limbs. Each arm carries its own constellation of neurons, capable of independent action and subtle decision-making. Imagine, for a moment, a mind with 8 arms, thinking in currents, processing the world not from a single vantage point, but from 8 simultaneous perspectives. The octopus is not a solitary thinker. It is a chorus of minds, coordinated yet diverse, like a council where each voice is both independent and part of the whole. When it moves, this distributed intelligence becomes visible. One arm investigates a shell, while another gently tests the current, while others balance the creature's weight in a crevice of coral. The central brain does not direct every motion as ours might. Instead, it sets intention, while the arms improvise, responding with remarkable agility to the unpredictable textures of the sea. To watch an octopus is to watch thought embodied, thought that ripples outward through flesh and suckers, like an idea branching into countless possibilities at once. And then there is its gift for disguise. The octopus carries a library of patterns in its skin. With a thought, or perhaps with a sensation, it can shift its color, its texture, its very form. Smooth stone, rippling sand, branching coral, all can be imitated in seconds. In this way, the octopus does not simply occupy its environment, it converses with it, merging and blending until it is indistinguishable from the world around it. A human might build walls to hide, but the octopus becomes the wall. A human might paint to express, but the octopus becomes the painting. It is as though civilization itself is carried in its body, ephemeral but infinitely adaptable. Problem-solving, too, marks its strangeness. In laboratories, octopuses learn to open jars, solve mazes, manipulate locks. They use coconut shells as shelters, gathering tools with foresight. In the wild, they are notorious escape artists, slipping through impossibly narrow gaps, plotting routes that seem almost mischievously clever. There is wit in their movements, curiosity in their reach. If intelligence is the ability to adapt, to imagine alternatives, then the octopus wears that ability openly in every gesture. But here is the paradox. For all their brilliance, octopuses live brief lives. Most species survive only a year or 2. Even the giants among them rarely exceed 5. Just as a mind reaches its flowering, it fades. This brevity may be the limit, the reason their intelligence never blossomed into continuity. A civilization, after all, is not built in a single lifetime. It requires inheritance, the passing down of memory, the stitching together of generations. For humans, language and culture serve as bridges, carrying knowledge forward. For octopuses, the bridge collapses too quickly. Each new generation begins again, brilliant yet unconnected to what came before. And yet, one might wonder, did they ever attempt to leave traces, even fleeting ones? Could there have been gatherings, ephemeral communities in reefs or caverns, where octopuses shared patterns of behavior that echoed across generations, even if unrecorded? Did they create art in sand, rearranging shells in ways that, to another octopus, carried meaning? Could the strange circles etched into seabeds, often attributed to mating rituals of pufferfish, one day reveal a wider spectrum of oceanic architecture? Momentary, but intentional? It is speculation, yes, but speculation with a gentle resonance. Perhaps their civilization, if it ever emerged, was one of gestures, disguises, and shifting forms. A city without permanence, existing not in stone, but in skin. A culture of improvisation, remembered not by monuments, but by patterns repeated in color and motion. If so, its remnants would be nearly impossible for us to detect. What monument can endure when the monument is a body? What archive survives when the library itself dissolves into the sea after only a handful of seasons? And yet, there is a haunting possibility. What if longevity once belonged to them? What if in some forgotten epoch, before predators multiplied, before environmental changes shortened their span, octopuses lived long enough to accumulate continuity? Even a decade might have been enough to build tradition, to pass on a rudimentary culture, to create a fragile thread of civilization that later frayed and vanished. We cannot know. We can only imagine the possibilities. And in doing so, we stretch the boundaries of what we think intelligence can mean. You, drifting now, might picture it. An ancient reef where octopuses gather, their skins flickering with patterns not of camouflage, but of communication. Arms entwine, gestures repeat, meanings emerge. A younger one watches, imitates, learns. In this moment, something like culture is born. It lasts for a generation, perhaps two, before being washed away, forgotten in the tides. But for those moments, it was real as any fire circle or painted cave wall. In this sense, the octopus is both a dream and a mirror. A dream of what intelligence could look like if it were not bound to permanence. A mirror reminding us that intelligence alone does not guarantee civilization. It must be paired with continuity, with time enough to build, remember, and carry forward. The octopus shows us how easily brilliance can vanish when given no bridge across generations. And still, there is mystery. Their eyes, so uncannily like ours, look back with a depth we cannot easily dismiss. Their gestures, their escapes, their improvisations, all suggest a hidden world of thought. We cannot say for certain whether they once built something ephemeral, or whether their civilization exists only in the fleeting brilliance of each individual life. What we can say is that in their presence, the ocean itself feels like it is thinking, dreaming through them. Soon, we will look beyond the octopus to others who inhabit the watery expanse. For the sea holds many minds, each expressing intelligence in its own language. Among them, vast and resonant, are the singers of the deep, the whales, whose voices weave across thousands of miles, and whose continuity stretches not for years, but for centuries. From the dream of the octopus, we drift onward into the song of giants. From the fleeting brilliance of the octopus, our attention drifts toward another lineage of minds. Minds vast, resonant, and enduring. Where the octopus burns bright and vanishes, whales linger, carrying memory across decades, even centuries. In the silence of the ocean, they are not only giants of flesh, but giants of time. Living libraries whose knowledge is sung, not carved, whose continuity is carried in currents, not etched in stone. Their songs ripple across hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles. Each note a vibration, each pattern a thread in an invisible tapestry woven from water and breath. To us, it may sound like music, eerie and haunting, but within those sounds lies something closer to an oral library, passed between individuals, shared across pods, carried from generation to generation. Whales do not build archives of stone tablets or paper scrolls. Their knowledge moves as sound, existing only when sung, and yet enduring in ways no monument could rival. Consider the humpback whale. Its song is not static. It evolves slowly with each passing year. New phrases are introduced, old ones fade, and entire populations may converge on a shared theme. This is not instinct alone, but culture in motion. Learning, remembering, transmitting. If civilization is the continuity of shared knowledge, Then whales hold in their voices a civilization of sound, invisible to the eye but undeniable to the ear. And then there is their lifespan. Some bowhead whales have been found with ivory spear points embedded in their flesh, remnants of hunts that occurred 2 centuries ago. Imagine a creature alive before the Industrial Revolution, still swimming in modern seas. Their lifespans dwarf ours, and with that longevity comes the possibility of memory stretching farther than we can easily grasp. A matriarch may guide her pod not only with instinct but with decades of accumulated knowledge, where currents shift, where prey migrates, where dangers wait. These are maps not written in ink, but carried in living memory, renewed with every breath at the ocean's surface. Migration itself can be read as a kind of writing, inscribed not on stone but on water. Across thousands of miles, whales travel paths that are astonishingly precise. Generations repeat these journeys, tracing invisible highways through the sea. A calf born in tropical waters may one day, decades later, return to the very same bay to give birth. It is as if the ocean itself holds an atlas, and whales are both readers and authors, writing their migrations into the living memory of their kind. To picture whale civilization requires a shift in perspective. Human civilization is visible. Cities, walls, roads, machines. Whale civilization, if we may call it that, is fluid, intangible, a civilization of resonance and memory. It leaves no ruins, no artifacts, nothing for archaeologists to unearth. But absence of stone does not mean absence of order. It may be that their monuments are waves of sound, their libraries carried in the deep, their rituals performed in migrations that stretch from pole to equator. Imagine, for a moment, a gathering of whales in some ancient sea, their songs weaving together in a chorus so vast that it reverberates through miles of water. To human ears, it is haunting music. To whales, perhaps, it is history being told, myths being remembered, migrations being mapped. Their civilization, if it exists, may be one of echoes and continuities, fragile to our eyes but durable within their own world. A world where the monument is not what endures in stone, but what is shared in song. You, drifting now, might feel the intimacy of this idea. A human culture is vulnerable if its texts are burned, its monuments toppled. A whale culture is vulnerable only if the singers fall silent. Their inheritance is oral, living, embodied in each generation. In this sense, they remind us of our own earliest civilizations. Before writing, when memory was carried by elders, when stories were recited by firelight, when continuity itself was fragile and precious, and perhaps their very invisibility has preserved them. A stone city attracts attention. It is conquered, looted, ruined, but a civilization of sound, invisible to eyes that search only for objects, may persist unnoticed. For millions of years, whales have sung. Perhaps they have sung the same themes, reshaped and retold, evolving like our myths. Perhaps they carry memories of climates past, of seas that no longer exist, of rhythms of the earth forgotten by us, but preserved in their migration and their music. The fragility of evidence returns to us here. If humans vanish tomorrow, our skyscrapers might last a few centuries, our satellites a few millennia, our stone monuments tens of thousands of years. But whales, if their songs fell silent, nothing tangible would remain. And yet, while they live, they may carry a civilization every bit as intricate in its own dimension as ours. A civilization without stone, without fire, without walls. A civilization of resonance. It might even be that their communication contains layers we have not yet recognized. We hear melody, rhythm, structure, but perhaps beneath those sounds are meanings we cannot yet parse. Directions, identities, genealogies, histories. What if the sea is already filled with libraries, spoken aloud by voices too deep and too strange for us to decipher? To whales, perhaps, the ocean is not silent, it is saturated with meaning. And in this we glimpse a humbling possibility. Civilization need not look like ours at all. It need not build towers or tools. It need not leave artifacts in soil. It can exist as continuity, carried in sound, memory, migration. Civilization may be fluid, living, intangible. To recognize this requires humility, a loosening of the assumption that only what we can see or touch can be real. So, from the dream of the octopus and the long memory of whales, we begin to realize that civilization might not be confined to stone, to permanence, to human forms. Perhaps civilization need not leave stone at all. Perhaps it can survive in water, in sound, in memory. Carrying that thought onward, we find ourselves drawn to the sobering truth that the sea, generous as it may be in sustaining life, is also relentless in erasing its traces. If whales, octopuses, or any other marine minds once wove something we might dare call a civilization, then their inheritance would face an adversary more patient than any conqueror, more thorough than any fire. The ocean itself is both cradle and destroyer, holding memory only as long as it chooses to sing it back, then dissolving it into silence. On land, ruins crumble slowly, stones weather but persist, bones may fossilize, and shards of pottery can wait patiently for the hand of an archaeologist. But in the oceans, permanence is an illusion. The very floor of the sea is not still ground, but shifting parchment, rewritten by tectonics. Every 200 million years, the crust of the ocean is recycled, swallowed into the furnace of the earth, and reborn. In geological time, that means that no matter what wonders might once have been built beneath the waves, no trace of them could endure beyond that cycle. The earth herself edits, rewriting each chapter of her oceanic diary until nothing remains but the memory of movement. Salt water, too, is no archivist. It is a solvent, a restless eraser that devours what it touches. Wood softens, metals corrode, pigments dissolve. Even bones become fragile whispers after enough years submerged. Where freshwater lakes may preserve bodies or forests in strange, oxygen-poor stillness, the salt sea rarely grants such mercy. It is a destroyer of records, a patient undoer of all design. Even shipwrecks we know of, great vessels of wood and iron, become little more than ghostly frames within centuries, sometimes decades, depending on depth and current. Imagine, then, the difficulty of searching for evidence millions of years older than humanity itself. This fragility gives rise to a haunting thought. If civilizations of water ever did exist, they may already have been written and erased countless times, their stories dissolved into the chemistry of the sea. Civilizations of water leave only currents behind, not in the form of ruins, but as living echoes in migrations, in the deep memory of creatures who swim paths older than any human road. Their traces are not artifacts, but patterns, repeated songs, recurring journeys, subtle continuities invisible to stone-seeking eyes. It humbles us, doesn't it, to recognize how fragile even the grandest effort might be against the slow patience of the ocean. A monument of coral may glow for centuries, a reef city humming with life. But storms break coral, bleaching unravels it, and shifting sands bury it. A sculpture of shell, no matter how intricate, is eaten away by the very salt water that once gave it brilliance. It is not neglect or malice, simply the nature of water. It allows no archive but change, and so the silence of evidence does not necessarily mean the silence of history. It only means that the ocean guards its past in ways our eyes and hands are poorly equipped to read. Perhaps the seabed holds no secrets we can touch. Yet perhaps the ocean's true archive is its life itself. The whales still singing their evolving hymns, the cephalopods flashing their brief electric displays of color, the fish tracing migration routes that mirror ancestors unseen. If civilization is continuity, then maybe these are the legacies we overlook. ephemeral but no less real. For you, drifting in thought, this reflection may be both comforting and unsettling. Comforting, because it reminds us that impermanence is natural, that even silence has meaning. Unsettling, because it shows how quickly any civilization, even ours, might vanish without trace. If oceans erase so thoroughly, what of us, when our own structures face wind, rain, and time? The fragility we see in the sea is also a mirror of our own destiny, stretched across centuries rather than millennia. Perhaps this is why the ocean so often feels like a symbol of forgetting. Sailors once spoke of it swallowing ships whole, never to return. Myths imagined sunken cities like Atlantis, civilizations lost, not because they were never there, but because the ocean is merciless in keeping them hidden. Salt water is both veil and abyss, hiding what might be true and what might only be dream. To stand at the edge of the sea is to face not only its vastness, but its silence. Yet in that silence, there is also gentleness. To imagine a forgotten civilization of the sea is not to despair at its absence, but to feel the poignancy of transience. What matters most may not be what endures, but what once was. A fleeting reef city alive with cephalopod minds, a chorus of whales telling stories that only water could carry. These need not be permanent to be meaningful. Their impermanence is their essence, like dreams that vanish at waking, leaving behind a residue of wonder. So perhaps we should not ask, where are their ruins? But rather, what might their ruins have sounded like before the ocean reclaimed them? Civilization need not be stone to be civilization. It might be resonance, current, color. It might be memory carried by bodies that swim and then vanish. And even if the sea has already erased every trace, the possibility itself lingers as softly as a tide on sand. And soon, as our wandering drifts from water to land, we will carry this lesson with us, that evidence is fragile, that civilizations might bloom and vanish without leaving a single stone behind, and that what is unseen is not always unreal. The ocean has spoken its part. Now, let us look to the earth above the waves and ask if civilizations there might have fared differently. From here, let us drift more softly still, carried by the slow rocking of imagined tides. We have wandered through the deep, listening for voices in the currents, imagining cities without stone, songs without paper, memory without monuments. And now, as we rise gently toward the thought of shore, we linger one last time within the embrace of the sea itself. For the ocean is not only the great eraser, it is also the first womb. Every intelligence that has ever looked upon the world, including yours, traces its ancestry to salt water. Within those primeval tides, simple molecules found rhythm, rhythm found form, and form found the spark of thought. The sea is not merely backdrop, but parent, the first teacher from which all later minds have learned. To call the ocean a mother is no metaphor stretched too far. It nursed the first senses, tuned the first responses, held the first tentative dances of cooperation. Long before firelight or stone walls, the ocean was already rehearsing complexity. Coral polyps, humble yet tireless, were stacking limestone into labyrinths, cathedrals more intricate than any carved by human hands. Whales were writing with sound across horizons unseen. Even the flickering camouflage of the cephalopod was a kind of language, a poetry of color too quick for us to follow. Perhaps then the first cities were not built to last, but to move. Perhaps they were woven from light filtering through water, from the crisscrossing roots of migrating shoals, from the pulsing of currents that connected far coasts without leaving a single stone to mark the journey. Perhaps they were cities without roads, without roofs, without ruins. Maybe the first cities dissolved into salt. Maybe their foundations were made of song, not stone, of memory carried in bloodlines rather than brick. They would not have been empty for being invisible. Their traces might remain even now, encoded not in artifacts, but in instincts, the way a turtle finds the very same beach across generations, or how a whale sings a variation of a hymn that echoes from an ancestor 1,000 miles away. You, drifting here tonight, might find this thought strangely reassuring, that civilization need not always mean permanence, that even if all is lost to time, the living moment itself was once enough. It is a gentle lesson, whispered from water to shore, that impermanence does not erase beauty. It frames it, the way the sea frames each wave, brief, singular, and yet part of an unbroken rhythm. So we pause, here at the tide's edge, between salt and sand. The ocean remains behind us, a vast memory that is both womb and tomb, a mother that births and buries in the same breath. Its silence is not empty, but full of echoes, faint yet profound. And though we leave it for now, it continues, ceaseless, as it always has. Soon, our gaze will rise higher. For if the ocean once held invisible civilizations, what of the sky? What of the creatures who did not swim, but flew? Could wings have once ruled the earth, weaving their own unseen histories in the air above forests and cliffs? The question waits, like a horizon just beyond reach. For now, we carry the sea with us, its rhythm still steady, even as we prepare to step softly toward land and lift our eyes toward the sky. From the shoreline where the sea leaves its memories in salt, our gaze can rise upward, drawn not to the depths below, but to the open sky above. If oceans might once have been the first cities, then the air itself could have been their counterpart, a vast and shifting stage upon which other intelligences left their traces. It is here, among feathers and winds, that we find another quiet possibility, that civilization need not belong to us alone, and that its early forms may have perched in branches, soared on wings, and spoken not in stone, but in song. Birds, so familiar in our daily lives, often appear small and unassuming, yet their ingenuity is everywhere around us. A nest is not simply a cradle for eggs, but a kind of architecture, a structure born from memory, planning, and skill. Consider the weaver birds of Africa, who tie blades of grass together into woven baskets suspended from branches. Each knot, each thread, is the result of countless generations refining instinct and practice, an unbroken line of design passed forward in feathered form. Some species build communal nests so vast they resemble villages, housing hundreds of birds under one roof of grass and twig. To see them is to glimpse the outline of a city, not built of stone, but of fiber, fragile yet enduring in its own way. Other birds build in ways that stretch our very notion of architecture. The bowerbird of Australia does not merely weave for shelter, it constructs art. Male bowerbirds gather twigs, stones, shells, and even scraps of color to create elaborate bowers, structures not for survival, but for beauty, persuasion, and the strange intimacy of courtship. Some arrange petals by hue, others sort shiny objects into gradients, some even create forced perspectives so that when a female approaches, the pathway seems to stretch in illusion. What is this, if not a form of aesthetic intelligence, a design meant not only to exist, but to be admired? And beyond structures, there is sound. Birdsong fills the air with patterns so complex, they can feel like languages. In dawn choruses across forests and fields, countless voices rise at once, weaving an acoustic tapestry of territory, attraction, warning, and perhaps something more. Some birds have regional dialects, with songs that shift from valley to valley. Others pass down variations through generations, an oral tradition as old as their line. Whales may sing in oceans, but the sky itself has long been an opera house, carrying stories on currents of air. Perhaps each spring, When a young bird learns the song of its elders, it is taking part in a ritual as profound as any recitation of human verse. Among them, the corvids, the crows, ravens, magpies, and jays stand apart as particular minds of wonder. They are problem solvers, bending the world to their will. They drop nuts onto roads for cars to crack, then wait for traffic lights to change before retrieving their prize. They bend twigs into hooks, fashioning tools to pull insects from crevices. They remember faces, holding grudges or showing loyalty, their memory stretching across seasons. And in moments of loss, they gather, as though in vigil, surrounding their dead in silence, as if to mark the passing with communal recognition. To see them is to wonder. Are we looking not only at clever animals, but at echoes of a culture carried on wings? Perhaps these scattered glimpses, the woven nests, the decorated bowers, the remembered songs, are fragments of something we struggle to name. If civilization is the repetition of patterns across generations, the refinement of craft, the continuity of knowledge, then birds have been shaping their worlds for millions of years in ways we too easily overlook. Their cities may be fragile, vanishing with each storm, their songs ephemeral, fading with each dusk. Yet impermanence does not mean absence. It may simply mean their civilizations exist on a rhythm too subtle for us to call by that name. For you, drifting now, it may be a calming thought that intelligence does not always roar, nor carve, nor burn. Sometimes it sings, it weaves, it remembers. Sometimes it hides in the commonplace, in the flutter of wings you pass without a glance, in the quiet architecture of a nest cradled in the crook of a tree. Perhaps, in their own way, birds are the feathered architects of forgotten cities, ephemeral but enduring in song and structure. And yet, one question remains. If birds today show us such brilliance, what of their ancestors? For these feathered beings are the descendants of dinosaurs, a lineage that stretches back into epochs when wings were still new. Could their forerunners have reached further, building not only with twigs and grass, but with possibilities now erased by time? Soon, we will turn to that deeper past, to ask whether creatures long vanished might have walked paths toward complexity far greater than we imagine. But for now, we leave the birds in their branches, their songs lingering in the air like echoes of hidden cities, still alive each morning, still waiting for anyone willing to listen. Carrying that thread backward through the fabric of time, the branches of the trees where birds now weave their cities of twigs and song stretch down into roots buried in deep ages, where their ancestors once walked, not on branches but across the soil of entire continents. For nearly 200 million years, dinosaurs ruled the earth, filling every niche, adapting to every climate, becoming not just one kind of creature but a vast unfolding of forms, from giants that shook the ground with every step to feathered hunters light as the wind. It was a span of time so immense that our own species, by comparison, is little more than the blink of an eye. When we look upon their bones in museums, bleached and arranged, it is tempting to see only monsters, slow and lumbering, creatures of instinct rather than mind. Yet such portrayals often say more about our imagination than about theirs. For in truth, some were agile, keen-eyed, coordinated hunters, while others nurtured young, moved in herds, and built complex ecosystems of cooperation and competition. Could it be, then, that among them there were sparks, small beginnings of what, in other lineages, grew into the light of intelligence? Consider the troodontids, small and feathered, with eyes large for gathering light, and brains proportionally among the largest of all dinosaurs. Their anatomy suggests curiosity, alertness, perhaps even the beginnings of problem-solving. Paleontologists like Dale Russell once imagined what might have followed if the Cretaceous extinction had not cut the story short. He proposed the dinosauroid, a speculative being that might have emerged had evolutionary pressures continued. Standing upright, With three-fingered hands and forward-facing eyes, it bore an uncanny resemblance to ourselves, as though intelligence might be a destination reached by different paths. We cannot know if such creatures ever truly came close. The fossil record is not a diary, but a fragmentary scattering of pages, most of them lost, many unreadable. Bones fossilize rarely, impressions rarer still, and the delicate traces of behavior, the fleeting marks of nests, tools, or culture, vanish almost completely. To imagine dinosaurs as beings of thought is to walk a thin line between evidence and wonder. Yet it is a line worth walking, for intelligence, in its many forms, has risen more than once. Why not then? Why not in them? Some dinosaurs already showed behaviors that hint at social learning. Fossils reveal nesting grounds where many gathered, eggs laid in orderly arrangements, suggesting shared places of return, generation after generation. Herding species may have passed on migration routes, much as whales and birds do today. Carnivores may have hunted in packs, coordinating movements, learning from one another. These are not civilizations in the way we define them, but they are steps, continuities, repetitions, patterns over time, a proto-civilizational rhythm, if only in its faintest beginnings. And what of communication? The resonating crests of hadrosaurs, those hollow tubes rising from skulls like ancient trumpets, may have been more than ornaments. Perhaps they were instruments, resonating calls that traveled across herds, carrying meaning we cannot decipher. To stand in a Cretaceous marsh, hearing those calls roll across the reeds, might have been to stand amid a chorus as intricate in its own way as birdsong today. Were these calls warnings, declarations, songs? We may never know, but the possibility whispers. Still, we must acknowledge the other side. Perhaps it never happened. Perhaps, across their vast dominion, dinosaurs remained creatures of instinct, marvels of adaptation, but not of reflection. For intelligence, though powerful, is not inevitable. Many lineages thrive without it. To imagine them otherwise may be only our projection, our yearning to find mirrors in every shadow. And yet, the silence of their fossils leaves room for more than one reading. Perhaps it never happened, but perhaps it almost did. And if it almost did, then the catastrophe that ended their reign. A single asteroid falling through the sky, a flash brighter than 1,000 suns, becomes not only an extinction, but a silencing. In that fiery moment, entire possibilities may have dissolved into ash, leaving no heir but the small, feathered survivors who would one day take to the air and sing. Civilization, if it ever stirred in dinosaur bones, would have been erased before it began, leaving us to wonder at what futures were cut short in smoke and darkness. For you, listening now, drifting between thought and dream, there is comfort in this too, that the earth itself is full of unfinished stories, of paths never taken, of might-have-beens as vast as the stars. Our own presence here is only one thread among countless others that might have been woven instead. Dinosaurs remind us that dominance is no guarantee of endurance, that even a reign of millions of years may end in a single night of fire. And yet, their legacy did not vanish entirely. In feathers and wings, in the sharp eyes of crows, in the songs of sparrows, echoes remain. Perhaps the proto-civilizational sparks we imagine among their ancestors found continuation in their descendants. The dream of dinosaurs may live on, not in bones, but in feathers, not in stone cities, but in woven nests. Soon, we will let this thought carry us even further forward, to ask not only about the almost histories of deep time, but about how intelligence, when it survives, may take forms we do not expect. The story of the sky is not finished, and wings still carry it onward. From the long shadows of dinosaurs, we rise again into the present sky, where their descendants still trace invisible maps across the air. If oceans once offered the first networks of exchange, and the land gave rise to structures of stone, then the sky offers something different. A library without shelves. A realm where messages are carried not on clay tablets or etched bones, but through sound and movement, drifting on currents of wind. In the air, civilization does not root itself in foundations, but floats. Ephemeral, renewed each moment in song and flight. Flight itself is a freedom few of us can imagine. To rise above barriers of mountain and river, to slip between continents with no need of bridge or road. This is the inheritance of birds, where humans labor to construct networks of exchange, highways of commerce and travel. Birds have always moved across vast distances with little more than the beating of their wings. In their migrations, stretching thousands of miles, one can see echoes of maps without borders, networks of passage older than nations, older even than many landscapes themselves. For glaciers carved valleys, seas rose and fell. Yet birds returned along the same paths, carrying memory not in books, but in their bodies, generation after generation. And then there is their language. Songbirds fill forests with an architecture of sound as intricate as any city skyline. Each melody is a declaration, a claim, a courtship, a story. Some songs pass unchanged across centuries, becoming oral traditions of the air. Others shift subtly, as though innovation and variation ripple through their communities. Entire dialects exist among flocks, such that one bird may recognize who is neighbor, who is stranger, by the rhythm of a phrase. In this, their songs are archives, shared knowledge stored in melody rather than ink. Consider the corvids, ravens, crows, magpies, whose intelligence astonishes even the most cautious observer. They solve puzzles, craft tools, remember faces. They gather around their dead in what looks like ritual, as though loss stirs in them a recognition deeper than instinct. To watch them is to glimpse minds probing the edge of abstraction, testing boundaries, shaping continuity. If culture is the repetition of learned patterns across generations, then corvids stand as one of nature's most remarkable experiments. A people of feathers and sharp eyes. In this sense, each flock becomes more than a collection of bodies. Each flock is a moving city of the sky, a living architecture of cooperation, turning and banking together in perfect synchrony. To witness a murmuration of starlings is to see a metropolis without streets, a choreography of thousands acting as one, shaping patterns that shimmer and dissolve across twilight. No single bird commands, yet all move as though guided by unseen design. Here, civilization is not something built with stone, but something enacted, fleeting, renewed each breath. And still, as with whales in the ocean, their records are fragile. Air does not preserve, and song vanishes the instant it is sung. Unlike the carved ruins of temples, bird civilizations leave little trace but memory. If intelligence is measured by permanence, then perhaps they will always appear less than human. But if it is measured by continuity, by the passing of knowledge from one generation to another, then the sky may hold libraries vast beyond our comprehension. Each wing beat, each call, a word in a language written not on tablets, but in the air itself. To you, drifting now, this thought may feel lighter than stone, softer than the currents of the sea, but it carries weight of its own, the weight of possibility. Civilization need not be fixed to the ground. It can be fluid like water, or it can float like wind. We measure by what lasts, yet perhaps what matters is what moves. Birds remind us that transience, too, can be a kind of permanence, renewed through rhythm, carried across centuries by fragile bodies that yet endure. And perhaps this is why humans have always looked to the sky for metaphors of the soul. We see freedom in wings, eternity in flight, transcendence in the arc of migration. It may be that what we sense, without naming, is that the sky itself is a library, filled with pages that can never be bound. Each dawn, when the world fills with song, the air is heavy with stories as old as the first feathered ancestors who learned to call to one another in the canopy. Soon, we will return from this height to the ground again, to ask what terrestrial lineages may have offered their own forms of continuity. But for now, let the thought linger, that above us, as we sleep and as we wake, whole civilizations of the sky are at work, unseen yet present, fragile yet enduring, a library without walls, a memory written in wings. From the living library of the sky, our gaze drifts downward again, tracing the fragile threads that tether flight to the earth below. For all their brilliance of movement and song, airborne cultures face a single, unyielding truth. What lives in the air rarely lingers in the record of stone. Skyborne civilizations, if they ever existed, would leave behind almost nothing we could recognize. Their monuments would be nests, woven from twigs and grass, delicate as lace, easily scattered by a storm. Their manuscripts would be feathers, iridescent in sunlight but quick to decay in soil, dissolving before they could be folded into the archive of fossils. Their libraries would be voices, echoing through the canopy for a season before falling silent. Fossilization is a game of chance, and it is a game that rarely favors the delicate. Bones that are hollow, lightened for flight, seldom survive the long crush of sediment and time. Feathers, though sometimes preserved in amber or rare deposits, mostly vanish as though they were never there at all. To imagine a bird civilization, or even the proto-civilizational traces of their ancestors among the dinosaurs, is to imagine a story written in chalk on a windy street. Vivid for a moment, erased almost instantly, the bias of the fossil record is heavy and undeniable. Oceanic creatures, encased in layers of sediment, are far more likely to leave their shapes behind. Terrestrial creatures, if buried swiftly by landslides or floods, may persist as impressions in stone. But the sky belongs to fragility. To live in the air is to gamble against permanence, to place survival not in endurance, but in renewal. Generations may succeed one another with astonishing fidelity, yet their evidence drifts away like breath into cold morning air. Perhaps that is why we feel a peculiar melancholy when we imagine lost civilizations of the sky. The notion itself feels ghostly, impossible to anchor. We picture nests suspended in branches, networks of woven homes across a vast forest canopy, each replaced year after year, never building the layers of stone that humans leave behind. We imagine flocks as cities, their shifting forms creating temporary architecture, but architecture that collapses each night into darkness, leaving no trace at dawn. Civilization, if it took wing, would have been built not on stone foundations, but on currents of air, dissolving in every storm, vanishing with every season. And yet, fragility does not mean insignificance. Breath is fragile too, yet it sustains life. A whisper may vanish as soon as it is spoken, yet it can change the course of a heart. The civilizations of the sky, if they existed, might be judged by the wrong measure. We search for stone, but they would have chosen song. We search for monuments, but they would have chosen migration. We search for permanence, but perhaps their genius was transience. A culture lived fully in each moment, renewed instead of recorded. It is humbling to imagine. We who build in concrete and steel may overlook the civilizations that prize renewal above endurance. Perhaps permanence is not the only measure of greatness. Perhaps to vanish gracefully is its own kind of wisdom. To leave no scars on the earth, no ruins to puzzle over, but only memories carried forward in living form. This could be a higher civilization than ours, one that trusted the wind to bear its record. But of course, when we seek evidence, we are limited. We cannot excavate the air. We cannot sift song through sediment. We cannot reconstruct a vanished flock from the faint trace of a hollow bone. The Earth itself is biased against the civilizations of the sky, just as it is biased toward the heavy, the durable, the grounded. What we know of ancient life is what survived burial, pressure, mineralization, not necessarily what was most abundant, most intelligent, or most enduring in its own time. So when we consider the possibility of airborne civilizations, we are forced into humility. Perhaps they never existed. Perhaps they could never exist. Their fragility too great for continuity. But perhaps they did, and their traces are gone forever, dissolved into the very medium that sustained them. Like breath in wind, like vapor rising into the sky, their memory is invisible to us now. For you, drifting now in thought, this idea may feel light, almost insubstantial. That is the point. To consider civilizations of the sky is to meditate on impermanence, on the truth that not all wisdom is preserved. Some wisdom is lived and lost, and perhaps that is enough. If the sky held cultures that sang their knowledge, passed it from throat to throat, wing to wing, then their civilization still exists. Not in fossils, but in the habits and instincts of the birds around us today. Each nest is a memory, each migration a tradition, each song a fragment of a greater story. Soon, though, we will turn our attention away from the sky's fragility. Because while the air forgets quickly, the earth beneath us remembers differently. Underground, in caves, in stone layers folded by time, memory lasts longer. The question waiting for us is this: if civilizations of the sky vanish into dust, then what of those that may have taken root in the soil itself, beneath the surface, hidden yet enduring? From dust and silence, the thought still lingers, carried gently on the wind. Flight is more than movement through the air. It is a metaphor for everything that resists being held, everything that cannot be contained. Perhaps that is why wings stir our imagination so deeply. They are freedom, but they are also transience. Every wing beat is both presence and disappearance, a gesture written against the sky that vanishes as soon as it is made. When we think of civilizations that might have taken shape among the feathered, we are drawn again and again to the same motifs: flight, song, ephemerality. A nest, woven with astonishing care, lasts a season and is gone. A song, threaded through the air, lingers only as long as the breath that carries it. A migration, spanning continents, is a kind of architecture in motion, a recurring pattern across the map of the earth, yet it leaves no monument behind. Civilization, if born of wings, would be one that resisted permanence by design, trusting continuity not to stone, but to rhythm. Flight itself is a rhythm. Each wing beat carries a bird higher, then lets it fall again, like breathing. And perhaps civilization in the sky would have followed that same rhythm, rising, falling, never fixed in place, but repeating enough to become tradition. A city might not have been a place of walls and markets, but a flock, its inhabitants bound together by memory and movement, dispersing and reforming with the seasons. Their continuity would be measured not in ruins, but in return, not in architecture, but in recurrence. Song is the other half of this imagined inheritance. Birdsong, already intricate beyond our full comprehension, could have been the medium of philosophy, law, story, and prayer. To our ears, it is music, but within it lies structure, syntax, dialects, some so stable they persist across generations. Imagine if those songs were more than territory or mating calls. Imagine if they carried wisdom, history, a kind of oral civilization that we, bound to the ground, could never fully decode. Perhaps their libraries were not scrolls, but dawn choruses. Perhaps their monuments were not built in stone, but echoed in sound, rising each morning with the sun. Yet the fragility of it all is undeniable. Civilizations of wings would not have written for us. They would not have chosen clay tablets or carved stele. Their records would vanish with each breath of wind, each season's end, each lost voice. And so we, arriving late to the library of Earth, find those shelves empty. Perhaps they were never filled, or perhaps they were, and the pages were always made of air, meant only to be read in the moment, never preserved for posterity. For you, drifting now, that idea may feel strangely comforting. Civilization does not always have to be heavy, enduring, unyielding. It might also be light, fleeting, fragile, and yet still full of meaning. Perhaps, as you drift, you too are flying, not with wings of feather and bone, but with the imagination itself, rising for a time, vanishing into the soft currents of thought. Civilization, like flight, may not always be about what remains, but about what is carried forward while it lasts. And so the motif closes as it began, with motion, with voice, with impermanence. Wings that whisper, songs that fade, migrations that dissolve into the horizon. If the sky ever held its own civilizations, they may have been less like cities and more like symphonies, less like empires and more like echoes. Ephemeral, beautiful, never lasting long enough to be caught in stone, but perhaps never needing to. The air remembers in its own way, not in monuments, but in cycles. Each year, the birds return. Each year, the songs begin again. Each year, nests appear in the branches, fragile, temporary, and sufficient. Civilization does not always require permanence. Sometimes it requires only renewal. From this thought, we must descend again. For while the sky forgets, the earth below often remembers. Beneath the soil, beneath the stone, beneath the layers pressed down by time, memory accumulates differently. If civilizations of wings leave little behind, what of those that chose the opposite path, burrowing down instead of soaring upward? Underground patterns endure longer. Tunnels and chambers can persist for millennia. Stone, once carved or shaped, holds its impression more stubbornly than air or feather ever could. Soon, we will wander there. Soon, we will ask what civilizations might have stirred in the shadows beneath our feet. But for now, let the image of wings remain with you. Delicate, transient, whispering across the sky, leaving no mark but wonder. From the delicate whisper of wings, let us descend now toward the ground, where life takes a different shape. Hidden, quiet, persistent. Beneath our feet, beneath the grasses and roots, whole architectures unfold that most of us never see. They are not built of marble or iron, but of soil and saliva, carried grain by grain, drop by drop, into forms that rival our tallest monuments. To the casual glance, they may appear as nothing more than mounds or ridges in the dirt. Yet when we peer closer, the illusion breaks. These are cities, organized and thriving, shaped by millions of tiny architects who live not for themselves, but for the colony that outlasts them. Ants, termites, and other social insects are nature's civil engineers, designing with patience and precision, though without parchment or blueprints. Their mounds rise like towers, some as tall as a person, others stretching in vast networks underground. Within them are chambers for nurseries, for storage, for ventilation, for farming. Some species cultivate fungus, carefully tending it as a crop, pruning and feeding it with gathered leaves until it becomes the sustenance for the colony. To describe this without awe is to miss its scale. We are witnessing agriculture, architecture, and social complexity written into beings smaller than a fingernail. Consider the termite mound. From outside, a strange earthen shape, rising out of the savanna like a forgotten ruin. From within, it is a masterpiece of ventilation, with shafts and tunnels designed to regulate temperature and airflow. Warm air rises through hidden chimneys, cooler air is drawn in from the sides, and the entire colony breathes as if the structure itself were alive. One might call it a lung of earth, a breathing edifice built not by an individual, but by a collective mind. Millions of termites, blind to the total shape, work together as though following an unseen blueprint written into instinct. The metaphor deepens when we see how these systems mirror our own. A skyscraper, after all, is not just a tall stack of stone or steel. It is a controlled environment, regulating temperature, airflow, and the movement of people. The termite mound does the same, yet with no architects to draft its design, no engineers to calculate its stresses. Or perhaps that is the wrong way to see it. Perhaps the architects are simply distributed, not centralized. Each termite holds only a fragment of the plan, yet together they weave something enduring. We might say the intelligence lies not in the individual, but in the swarm itself. Ants, too, display this distributed genius. They build sprawling tunnel systems that extend for meters underground, their chambers linked by narrow corridors, their societies structured into workers, soldiers, and queens. Some species have perfected fungus farming, cultivating crops within their subterranean halls for tens of millions of years. Others wage wars, capturing rival colonies and enslaving their workers. A few raise aphids as livestock, milking them for honeydew. If we strip away the scale, what remains are the hallmarks of civilization: agriculture, trade, warfare, labor organization, and even forms of animal husbandry. The difference is not in kind, but in degree. And here lies the curious speculation. If civilization is defined not by skyscrapers, but by patterns of complexity, continuity, and adaptation across generations, might not the insects have beaten us to it? Perhaps our notion of being the first is flawed, rooted in anthropocentric pride. We look for monuments of stone, forgetting that entire cities may exist in soil. We search for writing, forgetting that memory can be stored in instinct, encoded in DNA, and passed down through unbroken cycles of reproduction. Civilization, in this sense, may be broader than we dare to admit. For you, drifting in thought, it may be soothing to picture it. Vast underground metropolises humming beneath the grasslands. Entire civilizations that rise and fall without our notice. At night, while humans gaze at stars, millions of tiny beings continue their ancient labors, carving the earth into cathedrals of soil. To them, the boundaries of their cities are as real as our highways and borders are to us. To them, the continuity of the colony is the meaning of existence. It humbles us to realize that these civilizations endure not for centuries, but for tens of millions of years. Human skyscrapers crumble within decades if abandoned. Our great empires dissolve in a handful of centuries. But the ants keep building. The termites keep shaping air and soil into breathing monuments. Perhaps it is not permanence of material that defines endurance, but permanence of pattern. And yet, a question rises. Is this instinct, or is it culture? Do ants choose to build their cities differently, to adapt traditions, to change designs over time? Or are they bound by a genetic script, repeating the same patterns endlessly, without innovation? Civilization, as we know it, is more than repetition. It is change, adaptation, reflection. If we grant the insects the title of civil engineers, we must also acknowledge their limitation. Their brilliance is eternal, but it is also cyclical, never deviating, never evolving beyond what was written long ago. Still, perhaps we are too rigid in our definitions. To the earth itself, it may not matter whether a pattern comes from choice or instinct. What matters is that the pattern exists, that it reshapes soil and climate, that it endures across generations. The termite mound, rising from the savanna, is as much a monument as any human temple. The ant colony, sprawling unseen beneath our feet, is as much a city as any built of stone. And perhaps, if we are honest, the difference between instinct and culture is smaller than we believe. So we leave the soil with a thought. Perhaps civilization has always been here, rising and falling in forms we rarely recognize. Perhaps the Earth's first architects were not primates or tool makers, but the tiny beings who carved it grain by grain, creating lungs of soil that breathe across continents. Soon, we will rise from these hidden chambers and look toward larger creatures, those who walk the land with memories that stretch across centuries. But for now, let us honor the architects beneath our feet, whose civilizations endure in silence, unseen, yet unbroken. From the hidden chambers of soil, let us step upward into the open air, where larger beings shape the land not with millions of small motions, but with long strides and enduring memory. Among these, the elephant stands as one of the Earth's quiet giants, a creature whose body carries strength, but whose spirit carries something far rarer: continuity. If ants and termites represent the endurance of instinct, then elephants embody the endurance of memory. Their lives, long and deliberate, stretch across decades, and in that time they gather a library of knowledge, not written in stone, but carried within minds that never forget. To watch an elephant move across the savannah is to glimpse more than a body traveling from one place to another. It is to see a path traced across centuries, for the routes they walk are not random. They follow invisible roads of memory, routes remembered by their mothers and grandmothers, paths to hidden water holes that may not be touched for years until drought makes them necessary again. When a matriarch leads her herd toward such a place, it is not instinct in the narrow sense, but knowledge handed down like a story. Each step is a verse in a song older than any individual, a song of survival composed in memory and performed by living bodies. Their lifespans, 60, 70 years, sometimes more, allow for a continuity rare among animals. A single elephant may carry half a century of experience, and when she guides her herd, she carries within her decisions the echoes of droughts long past, encounters long survived, dangers avoided, and friends remembered. It is not unlike the way human elders pass down traditions, guiding younger generations not with formal instruction, but with lived example. The elephant's memory is not a metaphor. It is an archive, one that shapes the survival of entire families. Consider their tools, too. Elephants strip branches, shaping them into switches to swat flies or probes to scratch unreachable places. They dig with tusks, carve water holes with their feet, fell trees to access bark and leaves. Each act may seem simple, but the consistency of these behaviors hints at something shared, observed, learned. Young elephants watch their elders, and in that watching, they acquire not just skills, but ways of being, culture perhaps, if we are willing to stretch the word. And then there is grief. Few animals show it as elephants do. When one of their own dies, her herd may return to the body for days, even weeks. They touch the bones, caress the skull with their trunks, linger in silence as though in vigil. Some researchers report elephants returning to the sites of death years later, standing still as if in remembrance. What does this mean? We cannot know for certain, but it suggests a continuity not only of survival knowledge, but of emotional knowledge. The herd does not merely move through space, it moves through memory, through invisible landscapes of connection and loss. Imagine, then, the possibility. Could such creatures, with their knowledge of landscapes, their use of tools, their capacity for grief, have walked further along the path to what we might call civilization? If humans had not risen, might elephants have left behind traces of their own organized societies? It may sound fanciful, but so too does the idea of ants farming fungus, until we observe it. What if elephants once shaped more than branches, once carved more than water holes? Perhaps they built no monuments of stone because they had no need. Perhaps their civilizations were not externalized into walls and roads, but internalized into memory and tradition. Invisible cities, carried in the mind, passed down from elder to calf. A civilization not of bricks, but of remembrance. We often imagine that civilization must leave artifacts, must carve itself into permanence. Yet elephants remind us that memory itself can be an enduring architecture, a structure held together not by mortar, but by trust and time. And if such a civilization existed, or if it still exists in embryonic form among today's elephants, it would be nearly invisible to us. Bones and tusks would dissolve, wood and branches would rot. Memory itself would vanish when the last matriarch lay down. Civilization without stone leaves no trace. Civilization of memory vanishes like mist, leaving only whispers that something deeper was once there. For you, drifting in thought, picture it. A great procession of elephants moving across a dry plain, their silhouettes dark against the setting sun. To us, it is simply migration, but to them, it may be pilgrimage. A journey not only across space, but across remembered generations. Each footstep falls where countless others once fell, each path binding the present to the past. They carry not only themselves, but the weight of all who came before. In this, they are archivists of a kind far older than libraries. Their societies, too, echo ours in surprising ways. They live in matriarchal groups, with leadership earned through experience rather than force. They nurture young together, protect one another, and mourn together. The herd is more than a cluster of individuals. It is a continuity, a thread stretched across decades. If civilization is partly the art of living together with shared purpose, then elephants practice it daily, weaving their lives into one another's as surely as we weave laws and customs. And yet, as always, there is fragility. Human civilizations crumble when records are lost, when languages die, when traditions break. Elephant civilization, if we dare to call it that, is even more delicate, for it lives entirely in memory. The loss of a matriarch can fracture a herd's wisdom. The death of elders erases invisible maps. In this way, their culture, like ours, is always one step from vanishing. What we see today may be only fragments of something once fuller, once richer. Or perhaps we are witnessing its full extent, and its beauty lies precisely in its transience. There is a lesson here, one that touches us gently even as we drift. Civilization need not always be measured in towers and cities. It may also be measured in paths remembered, in grief shared, in songs carried across generations without words. To honor the elephants is to honor the possibility that civilization itself can be soft, invisible, tender. Soon, we will turn to other creatures, our primate cousins, whose hands and eyes hint at different stories. But for a moment longer, let us walk with the elephants along their invisible roads of memory, through landscapes where knowledge is not written, but carried in the heart. From the long-remembered roads of elephants, let us drift now into the shadows of another lineage, our own. If the great tusked wanderers remind us of memory carried in bodies across generations, then the primates whisper of something even closer, something that trembles at the edges of recognition. For here, in the dim corridors of deep time, there may have walked others like us, not quite human, not yet bound to language and story as we are, but beings with hands like ours, eyes like ours, and perhaps thoughts that moved in patterns not so different. The fossil record, we are told, is incomplete. For every jawbone or fragment of skull unearthed, there are millions more that vanished into the earth without trace. Bones crumble, soil erases, rivers scatter. What we see today is less a library and more a handful of torn pages, gathered in no particular order, their missing chapters guessed at with trembling imagination. Between the fragments of Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, and the many shadowed cousins, there remain gulfs of silence, whole ages unaccounted for, whole populations unremembered. It is within these silences that speculation stirs. What if, in some forgotten interval, there arose a branch of primates that leaned a little further into intelligence than their contemporaries? Perhaps they shaped wood not only into simple tools, but into structures now vanished. Perhaps they wove reeds into shelters, carved bone into ornament, etched meanings into bark or clay that dissolved before our time. Their presence would be like breath upon glass, visible only for a moment, gone without a trace. The thought lingers. Shadows at the edge of our family tree. They would have looked both familiar and strange. Hands grasping with the dexterity we know, but with eyes reflecting something we no longer see. Not human, not animal, but something between, something lost. If they sang, the songs did not last. If they spoke, the words dissolved into the wind. But for a season of deep time, perhaps they lived in small societies, bound together by more than instinct, more than mere survival. Consider how close even our known cousins came. Neanderthals buried their dead, adorned themselves with pigments, crafted tools of subtlety. Denisovans left their genetic whispers inside us, a reminder that we are not singular, but braided. Even these cousins, known only from fragments, hint at richness. How many others may have existed, whose bones lie unpreserved, whose works left no fossil, whose traces sank beneath rivers or rotted into soil? To imagine them is not to claim certainty, but to honor possibility. Civilization, as we often define it, is a story of permanence. Buildings, writing, agriculture, laws. Yet proto-hominins might have lived civilizations of impermanence. Societies woven from memory, gesture, rhythm, ritual. Civilizations not measured by monuments, but by gatherings around fire, by shared migrations, by the passing down of ways to survive the changing earth. If elephants build civilizations of memory, might lost primates have built civilizations of rhythm, daily patterns repeated until they became culture, invisible yet enduring for a time? Picture a riverbank hundreds of thousands of years ago. A small group gathers at dusk. Their tools, chipped from stone, glint faintly in the fading light. One elder gestures to the younger, showing how to split fibers from a branch, how to tie them into a cord. It is not recorded, not remembered by us, but in that moment, knowledge moves from one mind to another, the very heart of civilization. Days later, rain washes it away, and millennia later, soil swallows the evidence. To us, there is nothing. To them, it was everything. Their absence in the record is not proof of their absence in reality. Fossilization is rare, and the Earth is biased toward preserving shells, bones, and sediments of the ocean. The fragile remains of primates in tropical forests, where warmth, rain, and soil consume organic matter swiftly, would vanish almost instantly. The rainforest itself resists memory, devouring what falls into its floor. If there were primates who shaped their world in ways just beyond instinct, we may never find their trace. And yet, there is a haunting familiarity in our own gestures, as though we are not the first. When a child sketches symbols in dirt with a stick, is it not possible that others did so long before? When a hand presses paint against rock, leaving a palm print, is it not possible that earlier hands pressed marks against bark or clay, lost to time? The echoes resound in our bones, suggesting that intelligence may have bloomed and withered more than once before finding permanence in us. You, drifting now, may feel the weight of that thought. Civilization might not be a single dawn, but a series of attempts, many of which vanished before the sun fully rose. We are accustomed to thinking of ourselves as the culmination, but perhaps we are only the latest in a line of experiments, one that almost failed many times. Shadows at the edge of our family tree reach out, reminding us that we do not stand alone in history. We are accompanied by ghosts, forgotten cousins who nearly shaped the world in ways we cannot reconstruct. And what lesson might this offer? Perhaps that civilization is not inevitable but fragile. Perhaps that intelligence is not a ladder, but a branching tree, with many paths cut short, many flowers blooming briefly and then withering. Our presence here is not proof of destiny, but of chance, of survival through accidents and contingencies. To imagine the lost primates is to recognize how narrow the path has been, how easily we too might have been a shadow that left no trace. As the thought drifts, let it settle gently. There may have been others like us, who laughed, mourned, invented, remembered, and then were gone. No ruins remain, no words endure, no names survive. Only possibility, only the faint suggestion that deep time once held more than we can prove. These are the ghosts of lost primates, walking silently at the edge of memory, reminding us that even our own story could be erased in the same way. And soon, as we move forward, this reflection will carry us not only into speculation about creatures, but into philosophy itself. For what does it mean to live in a world where memory is so fragile, where entire peoples might vanish without trace? What does it mean that even civilization may be only a passing breath, gone before it can be written? Soon we will linger with such questions. But for now, we leave these shadows where they are, at the margins of our lineage, reminding us that the tree of life holds more silence than sound, more absence than presence, more ghosts than living branches. From those shadows at the edge of our family tree, let us carry the thought onward, not into the beings themselves, but into the silence that followed them. For what is absence, if not another kind of evidence? The earth itself is a patient eraser, sweeping its hand across the surface, softening sharp lines, breaking down the fragile, scattering the temporary, until only the hardest remnants endure. To wonder if others once walked before us is also to reckon with why we do not see them now. Consider a forest floor. A great tree falls, its trunk splintered and hollow. For a few years it lies there, marked by fungi, home to insects, slowly turning from wood into soil. The rain seeps into its fibers, the sun weakens its bark, the forest consumes its body. Within decades, what once towered above the canopy is indistinguishable from the ground beneath your feet. If a being had carved its surface, shaped it into something meaningful, or bound its branches into form, those gestures would vanish long before the centuries turned. The same holds for bone. Scavengers, sharp teeth, and the endless appetite of microbes work quickly. A skeleton in the open does not last long, perhaps months before it is scattered, perhaps years before it disintegrates. To fossilize is rare, almost miraculous, requiring burial in the right sediment at precisely the right moment. Most bones crumble back into earth, their calcium carried away in rivers, their story lost. If a proto-civilization made use of bones as tools, ornaments, or symbols, those too would dissolve, leaving little but suggestion. Clay may seem more durable, but unfired clay, shaped by hand alone, dissolves the moment water touches it. Imagine a pot molded by some early hand, useful for carrying food or water. Unless hardened by fire, a step perhaps not yet taken, it would return to mud in the first heavy rain. 1,000 vessels might be crafted, and not a single one would endure for our eyes to see. Even fire itself does not guarantee endurance. Ash scatters on the wind, hearths crumble when wood rots away, and charcoal merges with soil unless sealed in special conditions. Whole seasons of flame could have flickered across the earth, used and shared by communities long forgotten, without leaving behind more than the faintest discoloration in layers of ground. What then does remain? Stone mostly. Rock carved or broken has the best chance of persistence. The tools of flint, obsidian, basalt, these alone endure, silent and sharp across time. And yet even stone wears away. Rain smooths it, rivers carry it, tectonics swallow it into molten depths. Only a handful survive, scattered hints that may or may not represent the full picture. The rest erased. The soil itself conspires in this forgetting. It breathes and shifts, alive with worms, roots, and cycles of growth and decay. Layers we imagine as fixed are churned by burrowing animals, washed by floods, overturned by the press of roots. Nothing rests where it fell. What is buried today may rise tomorrow, and what is preserved one season may vanish the next. The land is not a static archive, but a restless palimpsest, forever writing and rewriting itself. This is why civilizations of impermanence slip so easily into silence. If primates carved wood, it rotted. If they wove grasses, they faded. If they sang, the air carried it away. If they built with mud or leaves, the rain returned it to earth. What we count as evidence is weighted heavily toward what resists decay. Stone, fossil, metal, and in their absence, we are tempted to assume nothing happened. But the absence may only reflect the fragility of the medium, not the absence of creation itself. Perhaps there were huts along rivers, long since swallowed by floods. Perhaps there were wooden markers set in fields, long since composted into soil. Perhaps there were woven tapestries, painted skins, carved bones, all gone, all eaten by the patient mouths of time. The silence we now hear may not be proof of emptiness, but only the sound of erosion, working slowly, steadily, until the world looks clean again. You, drifting now, might feel the fragility of your own world mirrored here. The houses we live in, the books we write, the voices we record, will they too erode? Stone and fossil endure, but how much of our digital age will vanish without a trace? Hard drives corrode, servers rust, paper fades. Perhaps in 10,000 years, little will remain of us but glass, ceramic, and stone. In that light, the lost evidence of earlier beings is not so surprising. It is, instead, the expected fate of all that is living, fragile, and impermanent. Even the bones of entire species vanish more often than they remain. Dinosaurs ruled the earth for millions of years, and yet their record is incomplete, scattered, and fragmentary. What hope, then, for a handful of early primates who may have carved, built, or dreamt beyond their station? The silence of the record does not say they were not here. It says only that memory is fragile, and the earth is a master of forgetting. Still, there is a lingering curiosity. For every erasure, there is also the possibility of a trace overlooked, a shard embedded in rock, a faint discoloration in soil, a mark upon a cave wall too subtle to notice. The land hides as much as it reveals. What has been lost may not be gone entirely, only folded away in corners we have yet to uncover. So, as we step away from this meditation on erosion, let us carry the thought softly. Perhaps the traces of lost civilizations are not absent, only hidden. Perhaps they wait, patient and unseen, beneath forests, beneath deserts, beneath our very feet. And soon, we will follow this thread into other realms of possibility, to see what forms of life might have left their own marks, faint but enduring, across the long tapestry of the earth. From the thought of erosion, let us drift outward into the quiet of the open plains. Imagine a wide horizon, grasses bending in the wind, the sky stretching endlessly above. A landscape so vast and so silent that it feels like a stage after the play has ended. The actors are gone, the props dismantled, the music faded. What remains is emptiness, or perhaps only the illusion of emptiness, for silence does not always mean absence. Sometimes it is a veil drawn across what was once alive with voices. Across the earth, such plains spread like blank pages. The steppes of Eurasia, the savannas of Africa, the prairies of North America, all carry the same sense of openness, of exposure, of continuity. Yet, if there were once hands shaping this ground, or feet that traced it in patterned lines, where are those signs now? The grasses rise, the winds blow, and the soil reshapes itself with every season. Whatever may have stood there long ago has been folded into the earth's unending cycle of renewal. Perhaps there were fires lit here, shared by bands of beings who gathered in circles, their shadows stretching into the night. Perhaps there were songs carried out across the fields, answered by distant voices. Perhaps paths once crisscrossed these plains, invisible highways carved into the mind and passed through generations, ways of moving from water to shelter, from hunting ground to gathering place. Or perhaps there was nothing at all, only the long murmur of wind and grass, as it has always been. Maybe they were here. Maybe they weren't. Maybe the silence is absence. Maybe it is erasure. The rhythm of these questions is itself like the rhythm of the plains, wave after wave of grass rising and falling, uncertainty layered upon uncertainty, until the listener can no longer distinguish between what is lost and what was never there. Earth is a patient editor, and the plains are her cleanest sheets. Trees fall and rot in forests. Caves preserve their faint etchings. The ocean buries its secrets beneath sediment. But the open land, the wind-swept ground, leaves almost nothing behind. Whatever structures are built from wood or mud are carried away. Whatever bones fall are scattered by scavengers, broken by weather, hidden by dust. The stage is wiped clean, again and again, as though no one ever played upon it. And yet, to stand upon such silence is to feel presence. The air vibrates with something we cannot name. Migrating herds, passing flocks, ancient migrations, all leave behind invisible echoes, threads of continuity we cannot see, but may still sense. A listener on the plain might feel watched, not by any visible eye, but by memory itself, as though the land carries within it some faint residue of all it has witnessed, even when no artifact remains. You, drifting now, may imagine yourself walking across such a plain. The horizon recedes with every step. The ground beneath you feels both eternal and fragile, its surface a thin layer over depths of time. Perhaps you hear voices carried faintly by the wind. Perhaps you see patterns in the grass, as though footsteps passed there long ago. Perhaps you feel the silence itself pressing close, asking you to wonder. Civilizations of land might have been swallowed by this silence. Imagine great gatherings that left only trampled paths. Imagine rituals marked not by stone but by rhythm, by song, by movement. Such things leave no fossil, no artifact, no enduring trace. They dissolve into air and grass, into the soil's breathing cycles. And yet, might they not still be part of the Earth's memory, recorded not in objects, but in patterns we have yet to learn how to read? The plains whisper uncertainty. They say, perhaps. They say, it might have been. They say, you will never know for certain, but you may wonder. And that wonder is enough to keep the question alive. Because to sit within that silence is to feel its weight, its possibility. It may be empty, or it may be full beyond measure. If you are drifting, that thought will wait here. The silence will not rush you. The plains will not demand an answer. They hold their stillness the way a great ocean holds its depth, with patience, with gravity, with the suggestion that there is always more below the surface. As we soften into this reflection, let the rhythm linger. Maybe they were here. Maybe they weren't. Maybe they passed across the plains like wind, never meant to leave a trace. Maybe their absence is the very point. A lesson in impermanence, a reminder that not all stories are meant to be read. And yet, the question does not close here. Because if the Earth forgets, perhaps the cosmos remembers. Perhaps the silence of the plains is not the end, but the pause before a wider inquiry. What if memory itself is not bound to soil or stone, but written into the larger fabric of the universe? What if the traces of vanished beings linger not here, but out there, in starlight, in radiation, in signals we have not yet learned to interpret? So let us carry this silence gently, and let it guide us beyond the horizon. The plains are quiet, yes, but they are not final. They are a threshold, And through that threshold, the story opens again, toward the possibility that the cosmos itself holds the forgotten records of what came before. Carrying that thought onward, the silence of the plains begins to dissolve into a silence far wider, one that stretches beyond the curve of the earth and into the unbounded dark. For if our own world may have once hosted minds now lost, then what of the countless other worlds that shimmer above us? Each star, a sun, each sun, a furnace around which planets turn, and each planet, perhaps, a cradle of life, a stage for thought, a vessel where intelligence might take a shape unrecognizable to us. The universe is not stingy with possibilities. It spills them out in all directions. Gas giants cloaked in storms, icy moons veined with hidden seas, rocky worlds brushed by thin atmospheres. Each one offers a different canvas, a different set of paints, a different rhythm of time. Where Earth gave us carbon chains and water cycles, other worlds may shape minds in silicate lattices, or in chemistries that move slower, heavier, more deliberate than our own. Perhaps intelligence there is not something with eyes or voices at all. Perhaps it is a colony of crystalline structures pulsing with light, each spark a thought. Perhaps it is a slow oceanic awareness spread across miles of methane seas, rising once every 1,000 years to remember itself. Perhaps it is a flicker in magnetic storms, a mind without body, carried only by the invisible tides of fields and waves. The stars are seeds of thought, scattered endlessly, and what grows from them may be stranger than any story we tell. We tend to imagine intelligence as a ladder, with rungs ascending, simple, complex, clever, human. But perhaps it is not a ladder at all. Perhaps it is a field or a river delta spreading in many directions at once. One current might lead to wings and song, another to trunks and memory, another to tools and fire. None higher, none lower. Each simply one way the universe has found to listen to itself. Intelligence might be measured not by how close it comes to us, but by how richly it answers the conditions of its own world. On a world of storms, thought might be a pattern of winds. On a frozen sphere, it might be the cracking of ice, signals carried through pressure waves and glaciers. On a world of endless night, it might be bioluminescent speech, sentences written in light across a sky of black. The diversity of planetary environments gives rise to a diversity of possible minds, each adapting, each improvising, each finding its own way of asking, "What is here? What am I?" And you, drifting now, may picture yourself as a quiet traveler passing through these worlds. Imagine the feeling of walking across an alien shore, the sand sharp with unfamiliar minerals, the horizon curved with colors no earthly eye has named. Imagine standing in a cavern lit by the glow of living walls, their rhythms pulsing like breath, as though the entire chamber were aware of you. Imagine looking into a storm that is not only weather but a mind, a presence, a watcher. Whether or not such visions exist, they carry the comfort of possibility. That thought is not rare, but woven into the fabric of existence, waiting only to be found. It is humbling to consider that we might not be unique. For so long, human cultures have imagined themselves at the center, first of creation, then of the solar system, then of the evolutionary tree. Each step, science has nudged us outward, gently reminding us that the universe is larger, older, stranger. To imagine other minds is to take that humility one step further. It is to admit that intelligence is not ours to own, but ours to share. Perhaps in some galaxy's distant arm, a species looks out at its night sky and wonders the same question. Are we alone? Perhaps their tools for listening are as crude to the cosmos as ours are. Perhaps their silence is our silence. Perhaps two civilizations may look up, separated by light years and centuries, each unaware of the other. each carrying within them the same ache of wonder. And yet, for all this imagining, the night sky answers with quiet. The stars are many, but they give us no clear reply. Radio dishes sweep across the heavens, listening for a message. But what returns is static, the ordinary hum of natural noise. We wait for patterns, for signals, for a whisper that says, yes, we are here. But so far, what we hear is stillness. That silence is not empty, though. It is thick, filled with possibility. It is like the pause between breaths, the space in a song where the next note might begin. Some scientists call it the Great Silence, others the Fermi Paradox. But perhaps it is less a paradox than a meditation. The universe may be full of voices too different for us to recognize, too subtle for us to hear. Or it may be that we are among the first early arrivals at a gathering not yet begun. The stars do not explain themselves. They shine, and in their light we imagine. The cosmos is a mirror, reflecting not only what is, but what could be. And in that mirror, we glimpse a universe of possible minds, scattered, hidden, waiting, or perhaps already gone. As you drift with that thought, know that it will remain unhurried, unbroken, waiting for you whenever you return. For soon, the story will turn again, from possibility toward silence, from seeds toward absence. And we will wonder together why, if the stars are so full of potential, we hear so little in reply. From here, the story bends toward a softer question, one that hovers in the spaces between stars. If the universe holds so many seeds of thought, why then do we find ourselves listening only to stillness? It is a question that has troubled astronomers, philosophers, and dreamers alike. A question sometimes named the Fermi Paradox, though paradox may be too sharp a word. For what we hear is not contradiction, but a whisper of absence, a silence that carries its own weight. The sky is vast and ancient, yet every search has returned the same refrain. Our telescopes glimpse planets, our receivers sift signals, and still no unambiguous voice emerges. No clear call across the void, no alien monument flashing like a lighthouse through the dark. Just stars and the planets turning around them, quiet in their orbits. The silence might mean we are rare, or it might mean we are early, or it might mean we have not yet learned how to listen. One possibility is that civilizations are brief, short-lived candles in a wind too strong. Life may arise, bloom into intelligence, reach a moment of awareness, and then recede again, undone by time, by accident, by forces larger than itself. On Earth, we have lived only a few thousand years in the fragile frame of civilization, a blink compared to the age of galaxies. Perhaps this is true elsewhere. Bright sparks that flare and fade, never long enough to overlap. A universe filled with voices, but each speaking only for a moment. Each gone before another can reply. Another possibility is that the cosmos erases as thoroughly as oceans and forests do. Geological time on Earth buries bones, scatters ruins, grinds monuments back into dust. Cosmic time does much the same. Supernovae erase, black holes erase, radiation scours, asteroids strike, solar winds sweep. If there were once great civilizations strung like pearls across the Milky Way, their traces may have dissolved into starlight long before our kind lifted eyes to the sky. In such a view, silence is not emptiness, but the consequence of time's deep patience. And yet, silence is not always absence. It can also be a form of peace. Imagine walking into a quiet forest at dawn. No voices, no songs, just the faint hush of leaves and the breath of earth itself. The stillness is not lonely. It is full. The same might be true of the night sky. The silence may be telling us not that nothing is there, but that what is there does not shout. Perhaps civilizations do not broadcast across the galaxy. Perhaps they turn inward toward contemplation, toward subtler ways of being. Perhaps they are content simply to exist, as whales are content to sing in waters that only their own kind can hear. And you, drifting now, may find comfort in that thought. For if the universe does not answer us, it is not necessarily indifference. It may be patience. It may be respect. Silence can be a kind of listening, a space where thought may stretch without interruption. The stars wait. The galaxies wait. And we too can wait, without needing every answer at once. There is also a gentleness in imagining that we are still at the beginning. Humanity's listening tools are young, barely a century old. Our telescopes are like the first crude lenses ground by hand, peering only at a corner of the whole. What seems like endless silence might be no more than the brief pause before the first reply. Perhaps even now, a signal is on its way, crossing light years, patient, unhurried, arriving long after we are gone, but not after we have asked. The Fermi Whisper, then, is not only a riddle of absence, but a meditation on time. Civilizations may be fragile, fleeting, like blossoms opening in the spring of one world, only to fall in the autumn of another. The universe has space for many such cycles, for endless rehearsals of intelligence. Whether we meet them or not, their possibility expands us, reminding us that thought may not be singular, but scattered like pollen on the winds of galaxies. Soon, we will turn toward this paradox more deeply, asking not only what silence means, but what it reveals about ourselves. For when we listen into the quiet, we are also listening into the mirror of our own impermanence, hearing the echo of what we, too, might one day become. And still, as the silence lingers, it does not press us to resolve it. It simply allows us to drift, to wonder, to breathe into the mystery. And so the stars continue to shine, indifferent or attentive, distant or close. Their silence is steady, and in that steadiness, we may find a calm we had not expected. Silence can be a kind of peace, a reassurance that even if the universe holds no voice but ours, it still holds us. And perhaps, in its own way, that is enough. From here, the silence of the stars becomes less a puzzle to be solved and more a mirror gently turned toward us. If Earth itself may hide forgotten civilizations, traces dissolved in oceans, scattered in dust, buried beneath stone, then why should the universe be any different? The question we carry into the sky may not only be about what is out there, but about what we are willing to admit about our own place within it. Humility arrives in such thoughts. For much of history, humanity has placed itself at the center of every story, the center of maps, the center of creation, the measure of intelligence. Yet each step outward has humbled us. The Earth was not the center of the solar system. The Sun was not the center of the galaxy. Our galaxy itself is but one of billions. Perhaps it follows, too, that human civilization is not the first, nor the greatest, nor the most enduring. The universe is older than we can grasp, and in that age, there has been room for countless beginnings. Consider for a moment the possibilities already visible within our own solar system. Europa, moon of Jupiter, holds beneath its icy crust an ocean wider than Earth's. Its waters are sealed in darkness, warmed not by sunlight, but by the tides of Jupiter's pull, stirred perhaps by hydrothermal vents at the ocean floor. If oceans on Earth gave rise to civilizations of coral, of whale, of cephalopod, then who can say what patterns of order, what strange songs might circulate beneath Europa's ice? Perhaps networks of communication pulse through its salt water, undetected, ephemeral, hidden from us as deeply as termite mounds were hidden from early human eyes. Or Titan, Saturn's veiled moon, where rivers of methane carve valleys and lakes, spread like dark mirrors. To us, such chemistry seems alien, too cold for life as we know it. Yet the thought lingers. What if life there is not as we know it? Civilizations may not require our carbon, our water, our fire. They may grow from other foundations. Methane instead of water, silicon instead of carbon, winds and magnetic fields, instead of lungs and speech? If so, then the universe is not merely a mirror of Earth's story, but a vast library of parallel tales, written in scripts we have only just begun to decipher. And beyond even our neighborhood, there are billions of stars with planets circling, many in zones where liquid water or some other fluid might endure. Each planet is a potential stage, each moon a possible page. On each, the story may differ. Some may be brief and fragile, like whispers carried only a short distance. Others may be grand and enduring, woven across epochs. Some may leave monuments of stone or light. Others may leave nothing but patterns in currents, echoes in fields of energy, traces so subtle we would never know they were there. If Earth erases, the cosmos erases too. Time smooths everything. Galaxies collide, stars die, planets are swallowed. Civilizations may have arisen in eras long before our own sun was even born. Civilizations that lived entire histories, struggled, built, and wondered, only to vanish before we had even opened our eyes. The silence we hear now may not mean nothing has been. It may only mean that what has been is no longer. And so, the question folds back upon itself. To ask whether Earth once carried other civilizations is also to ask whether the universe has carried them. To ponder why no trace remains here is to consider why no voice reaches us from afar. Both questions are the same at their heart. A meditation on impermanence, on how fragile memory can be in a world, in a cosmos, that forever writes over its own pages. Yet within that fragility lies a strange comfort. If civilizations are possible in many forms, if thought has sprouted like wildflowers again and again across time and space, then we are not alone, even in silence. We are part of a pattern larger than ourselves. Our brief candle joins a constellation of other candles, lit and extinguished across the ages. The fact that we cannot see them does not undo their glow. It only humbles us to admit that we may not be able to know. You, drifting now, might imagine the universe as a hall of mirrors. Each planet reflects a possible future, each moon a fragment of an untold story. When we look out, we see not only the stars, but our own wondering gaze, repeated endlessly, softened by distance. The silence becomes not a void, but a canvas, allowing our imagination to paint what might have been, what might still be. And perhaps this is the deeper gift of the silence. It turns us back inward, reminding us that we are already part of the very mystery we seek. We are the evidence that intelligence can bloom in the universe. If it bloomed once, it may have bloomed countless times. If it will vanish someday, it may also bloom again, like tides rising and falling, like seasons circling. Intelligence itself may be cyclical, appearing wherever conditions allow, disappearing when time demands, returning in another form, another place. Soon, we will let this reflection carry us into gentler philosophical ground, where speculation turns not only outward, but inward. For the cosmos, in all its silence, may be less a riddle to be solved than a mirror reminding us of what we already are. Temporary, fragile, luminous for a moment, then gone, leaving only echoes. And still, those echoes are enough to wonder, enough to dream, enough to carry forward the question that does not need an answer tonight. Carrying that thought onward, let us consider the delicacy of knowing itself. All knowledge, whether held by humans or by civilizations lost to time, flickers like a brief flame, vulnerable to the currents of existence. Just as a candle's light trembles in the wind, so too does memory falter, erode, and vanish. What we understand, what we preserve, and even what we witness is never immune to the quiet insistence of time, which reshapes every record, every trace, every thought, until it is only a shadow of its original self. Even the most enduring of materials, stone, metal, crystal, cannot escape gradual dissolution. Mountains crumble, cliffs collapse, and carved monuments, once proud and monumental, return slowly to the dust from which they emerged. Rivers sweep away evidence, winds scatter remnants, and the relentless cycle of growth and decay reclaims all that is built. Perhaps a civilization thrived on Earth before humans, leaving intricate designs beneath canopies or deep beneath the soil. And yet, over millions of years, even the most solid traces succumbed. Their stories are reduced to whispers, to impressions in the shape of valleys, to patterns in stone that we may never recognize. On a cosmic scale, this fragility extends even further. Stars that burned brilliantly, civilizations that may have reached across their planet's surfaces, signals sent across light years, they all fade. Supernovae collapse into silence, galaxies swirl and merge, and planets are swallowed by gravity or ejected into the void. If life once flourished in forms we cannot yet imagine, its evidence may have dissolved before it could ever meet our gaze. Just as a delicate manuscript fades under the sun's gaze, so too do the chronicles of the universe blur into the ungraspable past. Memory itself is a brief flame, fleeting and ephemeral. Even within human lifetimes, what is known can vanish. Oral traditions forgotten, languages lost, stories untold. What is preserved in books and monuments is merely a fraction that is already aging, vulnerable to water, fire, or neglect. The knowledge of countless civilizations, real or speculative, may already exist only as scattered fragments, scattered across time and space, waiting for someone or something to notice them. Perhaps this is a natural rhythm. The universe favors impermanence, allowing each form of intelligence to emerge, shine, and vanish. Its beauty appreciated only in fleeting moments. In this light, the universe can be imagined as a book written in disappearing ink. Each star, each planet, each conscious mind writes upon it for a brief moment, leaving patterns that are legible only temporarily, and then slowly fading into ambiguity. The ink vanishes not from carelessness, but from the necessary passage of time, the very flow that allows new patterns to emerge, new lives to form, new intelligences to ponder their own existence. Every thought, every construction, every communication is thus both precious and provisional. Even the records we cling to today are fragile. Satellites orbiting Earth, signals beaming into space, data stored in clouds or on servers, all are vulnerable to decay, power loss, cosmic rays, obsolescence. The knowledge we hold now, the civilization we have built, may itself disappear without trace in tens of thousands or millions of years. And yet, this impermanence does not diminish its value. It highlights the beauty inherent in existence, the ephemeral brilliance of awareness, the tenderness of consciousness itself. Perhaps this fragility is universal. Perhaps all intelligence, human or otherwise, is always poised between creation and disappearance. Even the ocean civilizations we imagined, octopus, whale, or coral, leave only subtle hints, traces that dissolve with currents and tides. The sky civilizations, those birds or speculative dinosaurs, vanish with their feathers, nests, and fleeting songs. On the land, ants, elephants, and proto-hominins leave patterns that are swallowed by soil, forest, and erosion. Across scales and species, all knowing is temporary, all understanding is fleeting. And yet, the act of knowing, however brief, is profound. To dwell in this contemplation is not to despair, but to marvel. There is a quiet reverence in realizing that every insight we possess, every moment of awareness, every trace we leave, is a small miracle against the vast tide of erasure. It is a reminder to observe closely, to honor even the smallest imprint of intelligence, whether it be in our own memories, in the lives of other creatures, or in the silent histories written upon Earth and across the cosmos. And perhaps there is solace in this shared fragility. If all knowledge is impermanent, then all minds, all civilizations, all songs, and all stories are linked by the same delicate thread. To recognize that each existence is fleeting allows us to place it in a larger tapestry, one woven from light, water, stone, and time itself. We, drifting now, are part of that tapestry, carrying with us what we see, what we imagine, and what we remember, even as it shifts and fades. In this awareness, we may also glimpse freedom. The impermanence of knowing allows space for curiosity to flourish without fear, for wonder to rise unburdened by certainty. The universe does not demand that we hold all answers, only that we appreciate the fleeting beauty of the questions themselves. Perhaps civilizations, terrestrial, marine, avian, or cosmic, have always been asking, always reaching, always shaping and reshaping reality for their brief moment before fading. And in that rhythm, we find harmony with the cosmos itself. Soon, we will begin to drift toward closure, carrying these reflections gently with us. The fragility of knowing reminds us that the questions we ponder, the mysteries we imagine, are themselves precious. Even if their answers vanish, the act of wonder persists, echoing across the oceans, skies, plains, and stars. And in that echo, there is a kind of quiet companionship, a gentle affirmation that, in the brief space we occupy, our awareness itself matters, even against the slow, patient erasure of time. Carrying our thoughts gently back from the vastness of space, we arrive once more at the familiar rhythms of Earth. The cosmos, in all its immensity, has reminded us of the delicate brevity of knowledge, the impermanence of civilizations, and the fleeting brilliance of intelligence. Yet even as stars burn and fade, even as oceans reclaim their secrets and forests erase their histories, we return to the simple, profound truth that anchors us here. Whatever came before, whatever minds may have lived and vanished, you are here now. You exist in a moment of awareness, a witness to the slow unfolding of time. And in that presence, there is both comfort and clarity. Perhaps we can imagine, just for a moment, the civilizations we have speculated upon, cephalopods shaping ephemeral palaces beneath the waves, whales carrying oral libraries across vast oceans, birds whose songs traced patterns in the sky, termites and ants constructing intricate mounds that rose like living skyscrapers, elephants traversing invisible roads of memory. They all, in their ways, reached toward order, toward understanding, toward communication. And yet, whether erased by salt, by wind, by soil, or by cosmic silence, their absence reminds us that presence is remarkable precisely because it is fleeting. We might whisper their stories to ourselves, not as definitive histories, but as gentle possibilities. Perhaps they were real. Perhaps they never were. Perhaps their civilizations existed for a heartbeat of geological time, ephemeral as dew. Or perhaps they endured for eons, leaving traces we can only faintly sense. The uncertainty is not a void. It is a space for wonder. It allows imagination to drift freely, to explore without urgency, to encounter the beauty of the unknown with quiet curiosity. And so, the question returns to us, softly, without insistence. What if Earth's first civilizations were not human? What if the earliest architectures, the first songs, the first patterns of thought, were written not in our image, but in the liquid, the feathered, the terrestrial forms we can only speculate upon? Perhaps it is a question without an answer, and perhaps that is precisely its gift. For in not knowing, we are invited to witness, to imagine, and to inhabit a world that is larger than ourselves, yet intimately connected to the moment we occupy. There is reassurance in this reflection. Though countless intelligences may have arisen and vanished before humans, though oceans have swallowed cities, forests have consumed nests, and cosmic silence has muffled far-off voices. Here and now, awareness resides. You are the observer, the thinker, the experiencer of these ideas. You carry within you the capacity to wonder, to feel awe, to participate in the quiet continuity of life, even if the echoes you hear are faint. Whatever came before, whatever vanished without record, it matters that you are present to hold these possibilities in mind, to let them drift across your consciousness as gently as a tide across the shore. In this soft return, we also recognize that endings are subtle, not abrupt. The cosmos teaches patience, and so too does our contemplation of Earth's hidden histories. There is no rush to conclude, no necessity to resolve, only the gentle flow of thought, moving from the immense to the intimate, from the speculative to the personal, from the distant and vanished to the here and now. Each breath, each heartbeat, each quiet observation becomes a bridge between the past and present, between imagination and lived experience. You, drifting now, might sense the weight of eons lifting, replaced by the delicate presence of the night. The questions we have posed, the what-ifs and perhapses, linger, but they do not burden. They move through the mind like clouds across a twilight sky, slowly, softly, without urgency. In their passage, there is a rhythm, a cadence, a reassurance that thought can wander far and return gently, carrying insight and curiosity alike. And yet, even as we settle, even as the mind drifts toward quiet contemplation, the memory of cosmic possibilities remains. We can hold both perspectives, the immensity of time, the fleeting nature of civilizations, and the intimate reality of our own presence. Perhaps it is here, in this balance between awe and comfort, between speculation and grounding, that we find the true meditation of the evening. We see the fragility of knowing, the impermanence of existence, and the quiet magnificence of simply being. Soon, we will allow these reflections to fade into the rhythms of the night itself. The oceans, the skies, the plains, the stars, all have their whispers, their traces, their vanished architectures. And yet, here we are, breathing, aware, a single consciousness tracing the contours of questions older than we can measure. There is beauty in that, and there is peace. Whatever was built, whatever was imagined, whatever was lost, it has brought us to this moment, and that alone is a kind of continuity, a gentle inheritance of awareness. And so, as the night deepens, we carry with us the soft illumination of curiosity, the quiet warmth of presence, and the gentle reminder that every mind, every song, every pattern of thought, even if it fades, is part of a larger story that continues quietly, patiently, endlessly. We are here, we are aware. We are part of the unfolding, fragile, luminous tapestry of existence. And in this knowledge, we can rest, we can wonder, and we can drift gently into what comes next. Carrying our reflections inward now, we arrive at a quiet place, a mirror held not to the world outside, but to the stillness within. The vast landscapes of oceans and skies, the vanished cities of ants and elephants, the whispers of civilizations long erased, all converge into a single, gentle lesson. That intelligence, whether human or otherwise, is fragile, ephemeral, and delicate as dew upon a leaf. Perhaps civilization itself is less a fortress of permanence than a fleeting dream, a pattern of thought and action that lingers only for a heartbeat before slipping back into the currents of time. And yet, in its transience, there is a subtle grace, a beauty born not of durability, but of the very impermanence that allows it to exist at all. You, drifting now, are part of this unfolding story. Even as we have imagined oceans filled with sentient minds, skies crowded with ephemeral architects, forests alive with memory, and plains that once echoed with vanished footsteps, the thread that connects these speculations to you is awareness itself. Your mind, quietly following these traces, becomes a participant in the contemplation of what may have been and what may never have been. There is intimacy in this participation, a recognition that even the act of wonder is a form of presence, a bridge connecting fleeting phenomena across time and space to a single consciousness now, here, in this moment. Perhaps it is in the fragility of civilization, in the impermanence of all forms of knowledge and culture, that humility emerges. We are reminded that what we see, what we record, what we understand, is always partial, always provisional. Mountains rise and fall. Rivers carve and swallow. Oceans reclaim. Forests grow and decay. And yet we linger in the awareness of these patterns. This awareness, delicate and transient, is itself a quiet kind of power. A gentle reminder that being present, even without answers, is enough. The universe need not yield certainty. It offers only invitation, curiosity, and reflection. Civilization may be a fragile dream, and yet it is a dream worth noticing. Perhaps it is built not only from stone and song, but from thought, from connection, from fleeting gestures that ripple across generations in ways we may never fully trace. Consider the elephant walking an invisible road of memory, the ant tending its fungus, the whale carrying songs across oceans, the bird shaping a nest in a branch that will not last a season. Each of these acts is a small civilization in miniature. Patterns repeated, knowledge passed, care enacted. Their fragility does not diminish their significance. It illuminates it, casting each moment of consciousness as a rare and precious illumination within the long night of time. As we look inward, the mirror reflects not only the vanished and ephemeral, but also the enduring presence of your own awareness. You are a traveler in this narrative, moving through layers of speculation, history, and possibility. You are witnessing the rise and fall of imagined civilizations, the erasure of evidence, the slow unfolding of natural processes, and the quiet persistence of life. In this witnessing, there is a gentle power, the recognition that awareness itself, however momentary, is part of the continuum, a thread that links what was, what might have been, and what now is, and yet, there is no need to resolve the questions we have posed. Perhaps there were oceans of octopus architects, skies alive with avian song, forests thrumming with elephant memory, plains where primates may have walked in ways we cannot reconstruct. Perhaps they were real, perhaps they were imagined, and perhaps it is both simultaneously. The uncertainty is not a void, but a space for quiet reflection, a place where wonder can dwell without urgency, without pressure, without expectation. You may rest in that uncertainty, allowing the questions themselves to become companions rather than burdens. Consider the rhythm of the universe, gentle and insistent. Stars rise and set, tides ebb and flow, forests breathe, mountains endure, and yet all is in constant motion. All is in a state of becoming and passing. Within this rhythm, the fragility of civilization and memory becomes a form of grace. To witness it, to imagine it, to ponder it, is to participate in a meditation on impermanence, continuity, and presence. You, drifting now, inhabit the space where thought and wonder converge, where the echo of what has passed resonates softly alongside the quiet pulse of what is present. Perhaps the lesson of this contemplation is not one of knowledge or certainty, but of intimacy with the ephemeral. To understand that civilizations rise and fall, that songs fade, that nests crumble, that memories vanish, is to be invited into a gentle humility. It is to recognize that life itself, in all its forms, is a transient gift, a fragile marvel to be noticed, appreciated, and honored. The impermanence of what came before highlights the preciousness of the moment you occupy, the clarity of your own consciousness, and the quiet value of bearing witness, however fleetingly, to the unfolding story of the earth and its imagined histories. And so, the mirror is both quiet and reflective. It does not demand answers. It does not insist on conclusions. It shows only the gentle interweaving of life, intelligence, and presence, highlighting the fragility that threads through every epoch, every species, every moment. You may feel the breadth of time, the weight of lost civilizations, the whisper of cosmic possibilities, and yet, simultaneously, the lightness of being, the simple awareness of existing now, in a world that has held countless mysteries and continues to offer them, quietly, patiently, without rush. But tonight, you need not solve it. You need not determine whether the first architects of Earth were cephalopods, whales, birds, insects, elephants, or proto-humans. You need not reconcile the silence of the cosmos with the noise of imagination. You may simply dwell in the wonder of possibility, in the intimacy of presence, in the delicate awareness that you are here, that consciousness persists, and that the act of reflection is itself a form of participation in the vast, gentle unfolding of life. And so, in this quiet mirror, let the mind rest. Let the imagination drift across vanished oceans, across silent skies, across forests and plains, and yet return softly to the warmth of your own awareness. Let the questions linger as gentle companions, not as burdens. Let the awareness of fragility illuminate the value of presence. Let the reflection of civilizations long erased remind you of the beauty of being, even for a fleeting moment. Soon, we will begin to drift toward the final layers of reflection, toward the soft release of all questions into the calm of night. But here, in this quiet mirror, you are enough. You are part of the continuum. You are the observer and the witnessed, the traveler and the resting. The fragility of civilizations, of knowledge, of memory, only magnifies the preciousness of the consciousness that holds them now. And in this gentle understanding, the heart may settle, the mind may soften, and the body may sink deeper into the rhythm of night, cradled by the awareness that simply being is already a kind of enduring presence. Carrying that quiet reflection onward, we arrive at the gentle comfort of unknowing. There is a subtle peace in not having all the answers, a soft release that comes when we allow the questions themselves to linger like the last notes of a distant song. Perhaps the first architects of Earth were creatures unlike us, and perhaps they never were at all. Perhaps oceans once thrummed with minds that built fleeting cities of thought, and perhaps the skies once held wings that whispered in patterns now vanished. We cannot say for certain, and yet the uncertainty itself is not something to fear. It is a soft cloak, a lullaby for the mind, allowing curiosity to rest without the weight of proof or conclusion. Imagine, for a moment, that answers are like footprints on a beach. They may fade with the tide, washed away by waves, scattered by wind, leaving only the impression that something passed here before. Yet the feeling of walking along that shore, the rhythm of steps, the hush of water against sand, lingers long after the prints have disappeared. So too with understanding. The facts we gather, the conclusions we reach, will always erode in time. The certainty we crave is fleeting, and yet wonder, the gentle curiosity that stirs the heart and the mind, remains. It flows through the moments, unbound by evidence, unharmed by forgetting, persistent as the soft pulse of night itself. You, drifting now, may feel the questions you have carried through this journey of oceans. Skies, forests, and plains beginning to soften. Perhaps it is enough simply to let them hover, unclaimed and unanswered, like leaves suspended in a calm stream. There is no urgency here, no need to grasp at clarity, no requirement to assemble a final picture. The mind, freed from the burden of resolution, may find a rhythm in this spaciousness, a slow cadence of thought that eases the body and invites a deeper release. In this way, not knowing becomes a gentle companion, a reminder that the act of wondering itself holds beauty, and that curiosity need not end with comprehension. Consider the fragile structures we have imagined, the ephemeral nests of birds, the invisible roads of elephants, the fleeting cities of octopus beneath waves that erase their memory, and the vanishing patterns of ants beneath the soil. Each of these is a testament to impermanence, a quiet teaching that even the most intricate civilizations leave only whispers behind. And yet, in imagining them, in tracing their faint echoes with the mind's eye, we participate in a kind of remembrance. We hold, however briefly, a space for what may have been, and in doing so, we learn that existence itself is a series of soft impressions, delicate and transient, and that witnessing them without certainty is a form of intimacy with the world. Perhaps unknowing is a rhythm, a slow exhale that follows the in-breath of curiosity. It is the space between notes in a melody, the hush that allows song to breathe. When we release the insistence for answers, the mind softens, tension dissolves, and the heart aligns with the quiet cadence of the night. There is an elegance to this absence, a grace in allowing questions to drift without grasping, a serenity in letting wonder be sufficient unto itself. Each lingering thought becomes a gentle current, carrying consciousness through imagined cities, vanished architects, and the enduring pulse of life, without pressing toward conclusions. If you are drifting now, you may notice the sensation of time stretching, of moments flowing like soft tides over a quiet shore. In this flow, answers fade naturally, like stars disappearing into dawn, and yet the soft glow of curiosity remains as steady and patient as the moon above a calm sea. There is no need to pursue certainty. It is enough to float in the rhythm of thought, to feel the gentle ebb and flow of possibility, to allow the imagination to trace shapes in the dark without demanding they solidify into fact. In this space, the mind finds rest and the heart finds comfort. We might think of unknowing as a sanctuary, a place where the mind is free from the weight of resolution. Here, the questions we have carried about oceans filled with intelligence, skies alive with song, forests echoing with memory, can linger without pressure. Each possibility becomes a soft brushstroke on the canvas of imagination, delicate and fleeting, and yet vivid in the mind's eye. In this sanctuary, uncertainty is not a void, but a gentle invitation to notice, to imagine, to drift. The very act of holding space for what we do not know becomes a balm, soothing the restless thoughts that may have pressed against the edges of consciousness, and allowing a slow, steady relaxation to settle over body and mind alike. Even the stars, distant and silent, offer a reflection of this comfort. They shine across incomprehensible spans of space and time, illuminating what we cannot touch, marking patterns that hint at existence without explaining it fully. Their light reaches us as both question and reassurance. Perhaps life exists elsewhere. Perhaps it does not. Perhaps civilizations rise and fall beyond our sight. And yet, the universe continues its quiet rhythm. In this reflection, we may understand that the absence of certainty is not emptiness, but a form of gentle presence, a silent companion to wonder, a reminder that not knowing is itself a quiet, enduring beauty. And so, let the mind float on this current of unknowing. Allow the layers of imagined oceans, skies, forests, plains, and vanished architects to mingle with the awareness of your own consciousness. Let the rhythm of thought slow, stretching into the spaces between questions, resting in the soft glow of possibility. Here, answers may fade, but wonder remains. Here, curiosity is sufficient, and the heart may settle into a calm acceptance of the unknown. Here, in the gentle embrace of unknowing, there is safety, there is beauty, and there is quiet, patient peace. Soon, we will begin the final drift toward the stillest part of the night, toward a release of all questions into gentle silence. But for now, Simply rest with the knowledge that not knowing is a gift, that uncertainty carries a soft grace, and that the mind, released from its insistence for clarity, may finally find the slow, flowing rhythm it seeks. You, drifting now, are safe to wander through possibilities, to imagine without conclusion, to rest in the quiet comfort that arises when answers are set aside and the gentle wonder of existence is allowed to linger, soft and unhurried, like a tide settling over the shore at the edge of night. Carrying the soft rhythm of unknowing onward, let us drift deeper into the long, gentle passage toward rest, where the mind can move freely between images of oceans, skies, and silent plains. Imagine the salt of the sea brushing against imagined shores, its whispering tide tracing patterns over sands that hold no permanent mark, just fleeting impressions that vanish as quickly as they appear. Perhaps once, beneath those waters, minds stirred and passed, leaving echoes only in currents that fold and fold again upon themselves. Perhaps they built nothing permanent, and yet the shapes of their activity linger faintly, like ripples caught in memory. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, maybe it never could have been. In this softness, the mind begins to loosen, letting go of insistence, allowing images to arrive and dissolve as easily as waves meeting the shore. Above, the sky stretches wide, open to infinite possibility. Winged creatures drift in thought, their songs folding across invisible patterns, across imagined cities of air that rise and vanish with the passing wind. Perhaps the first architects of flight traced pathways through clouds, communicating in signals invisible to us, and perhaps we will never know the full story. Yet the beauty of their imagined presence rests gently in our consciousness, a soft motif of freedom, of ephemeral intelligence, of patterns that exist and fade like the faint shimmer of starlight. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, maybe it was only a dream we carry. Each repetition draws the mind into a slower, quieter rhythm, a cadence that lulls awareness toward the edge of thought and sleep. The plains extend silently beneath, their soil rich with memory, with life that moves and passes unnoticed, leaving traces in leaf litter, in roots, in the slow folding of land over time. Ants and termites, elephants and lost primates, once imagined to have walked and shaped this land, leave impressions that are almost invisible, yet in the mind's eye, they form gentle currents of continuity. Perhaps these silent actors shaped the world in ways we cannot see. Perhaps they were always fleeting. Perhaps they were part of the same pattern that connects oceans and skies and soil. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, maybe it never could be otherwise. With each phrase, the rhythm slows further, softening the edges of consciousness, guiding thought toward rest. The stars above, scattered like seeds of thought across the night sky, shine faintly, their light reaching us across vast stretches of time and space. They mark distances and possibilities, hinting at lives elsewhere, civilizations unimagined, and patterns that we may never comprehend. Perhaps their glow carries stories. Perhaps it does not. Perhaps silence itself is an answer, a lullaby of cosmic patience. And yet, in the quiet of the night, the repetition of salt, wings, soil, and stars intertwines, a slow rhythm that matches the gentle rise and fall of breath, that mirrors the mind drifting in and out of thought, in and out of consciousness, toward sleep. Imagine now the gentle fold of the ocean's arms around the world, the soft caress of tides erasing footprints, rewriting memory, smoothing surfaces until only the faintest hints remain. Let your mind follow that motion, the rise and fall of imagined currents carrying echoes of intelligence long vanished, carrying possibilities without end. Perhaps an octopus thought in currents. Perhaps whales carried stories across the deep. Perhaps humans themselves arrived only after long lines of vanished cities. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, maybe it will never matter. Each phrase allows the mind to relax further, to drift alongside these gentle rhythms, until the act of wondering becomes soft, uninsistent, almost imperceptible, like a whisper fading into the night. Above, wings fold and unfold, birds and imagined creatures gliding silently, tracing invisible patterns across open skies. Corvids, songbirds, creatures lost in time or imagined in thought, carry intelligence that vanishes like mist, that leaves only hints in memory and metaphor. Perhaps their songs were once libraries. Perhaps their nests were cities. Perhaps the patterns they traced were lessons we cannot read. And yet, the imagery alone, wings rising, folding, disappearing, carries a rhythm that softens the mind, easing it toward rest, drawing attention away from analysis and into quiet observation. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it only needed to be imagined, to be real for a moment. The plains beneath, vast and unbroken, remind us of continuity, even amidst absence. Soil breathes slowly, absorbing and returning life, hosting traces of movement that may be imperceptible to the casual eye. Ants, elephants, primates, and creatures long vanished have moved through this space, shaping it gently, impermanently. Their traces might be gone, yet in imagining them, we participate in a kind of memory, a shared presence across time and consciousness. Perhaps the first cities were ephemeral. Perhaps they existed in ways we cannot detect. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it only mattered that they were, if only for a moment, in the currents of time. The repetition of phrase, of rhythm, of idea, allows awareness to sink deeper, merging with the imagined landscapes and the slow cadence of thought. Stars, faint and distant, continue to glimmer, folding the cosmos into this tapestry of sleep. They are reminders of vastness, of possibility, of lives and intelligences that may have come and gone beyond our vision. Perhaps the universe is filled with echoes like those we trace here on Earth. Perhaps it is silent, and that silence itself is a lullaby, a gentle invitation to release the mind. Salt, wings, soil, stars, they weave together now, repeating softly, a mantra for quietness, a thread connecting oceans and skies and plains and cosmos. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, maybe it does not matter. Each repetition becomes slower, lighter, a rhythm that carries consciousness into the spaces between thoughts, into the edges of awareness where sleep begins. Notice now the gentle dissolution of imagery into feeling. The salt becomes warmth against the skin, the wings a soft pressure of air, the soil a grounded support beneath, the stars a faint shimmer above. The mind, released from effort, follows these sensations, these motifs, these echoes, into a calm current. Perhaps once civilizations left marks here, perhaps they did not. Perhaps the stories are real, perhaps they are imagined. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it only needs to be enough to drift with, to float along this long, soft passage, carried by rhythm and memory and quiet curiosity. You, drifting now, may feel the slow melding of all these elements, the oceans, the skies, the plains, and the cosmos, folding gently over consciousness. Repetition softens tension, anaphora eases the pulse, and the mind settles into a current that moves without effort, a long drift into rest, into near silence. Perhaps it was. Perhaps it wasn't. Perhaps it is simply the quiet moment between one thought and the next, a space where sleep may arrive unannounced, unhurried, but perfectly timed. And as the night deepens, as the imagined tides ebb, and the wings fold for the final time, the plains quiet themselves, and the stars continue their slow, imperceptible dance. You glide with them, weightless, unbound, embraced by the gentle rhythm of the universe. Here, at the edge of consciousness, the mind may finally surrender to the slow, steady pulse of rest, carrying the images and ideas softly, almost imperceptibly, into the quiet folds of sleep. Salt, wings, soil, stars, all repeat, all fade, all settle. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, maybe it no longer matters. And in that final repetition, the drift into rest completes its gentle arc, leaving only the quiet, untroubled presence of being, floating freely between imagination and slumber. From here, let the mind linger in the soft echo of everything imagined, carrying the slow, patient rhythm of oceans, skies, and silent plains into the tender folds of consciousness. You, drifting now, may notice the faintest warmth of presence, the gentle pulse of breath, the steady rise and fall that connects you to this vast, unfolding story. Sleep well, traveler. These words, simple and unhurried, are neither command nor expectation, but a quiet invitation to rest, to let the weight of thought ease from your shoulders, to let the mind float free among the echoes of civilizations imagined, remembered, and perhaps never known at all. Perhaps the first cities of the oceans, the skies, and the land remain only in ripple and feather and soil. Yet even that is enough to carry wonder, and that wonder is yours to hold, to release, to drift with. You are already enough. These words settle gently, like soft moss on stone, like a quiet current wrapping around unseen roots beneath the soil. Nothing more needs to be proven, no final answer sought, no horizon fully reached. The oceans of thought you have traveled through, the winged cities of songbirds and vanished dinosaurs, the hidden architectures of ants and elephants, the silent whispers of stars and cosmic possibility. All are companions that fold back into stillness alongside you. Perhaps they leave no permanent mark on stone or water. Perhaps their traces are only visible in the quiet opening of awareness, in the gentle turning of a thought from curiosity to ease. Imagine the tidal pulse of waves fading into a still lagoon, the wings folding above in final rest, the plains lying untroubled beneath a night sky scattered with stars that have watched for eons. Perhaps what has been imagined is only shadow, only possibility, only the brief glimmer of a mind at play with the vastness of time and space. And yet, that glimmer is enough to carry you, to remind you that presence itself is meaning, that being here, now, in the quiet of your own consciousness, is enough. Sleep well, traveler. Let these words repeat softly in your mind, a gentle lullaby that needs no melody, no insistence, only the steady assurance of their repetition. The world outside may hold questions that never resolve, civilizations that rise and fall in silence, traces that erode, dissolve, vanish. And yet, within this space, within this long and gentle journey, you are allowed to rest. Perhaps the first architects of water, the thinkers of air, the memory keepers of the land, all that has come before and all that will never be known, converge here in the quiet, not as proof or answer, but as a soft companion to your drifting mind. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, maybe it is enough that we imagine it together, even briefly, before it slips into the calm folds of night. Your breath follows its natural rhythm, slow and steady, as if the world itself exhales with you. Each inhalation brings in the lingering fragrance of thought, of possibility, of unseen cities and vanished minds. Each exhalation releases tension, expectation, and the need for certainty, leaving only the calm certainty of being, of resting, of existing in the gentle now. Sleep well, traveler. You are already enough. The words are a soft anchor, tying you to the quiet assurance that nothing more is required. There is no urgency, no pressure, only the patient unfolding of time, the gentle hum of awareness giving way to rest. Even as the imagination wanders across oceans, through skies, across plains, into the cosmos and back, each image folds into the next, without insistence, without friction. The octopus drifting among currents, The whales carrying long memory across waves, the birds tracing invisible cities in air, the ants and elephants moving through silent lands, the faint glimmer of civilizations that may have existed before human eyes. Each becomes a soft echo that repeats and fades in the mind, a motif that soothes rather than demands. Perhaps the universe itself is a soft, patient guide, offering infinite possibilities without expectation, leaving you here, safe, supported, and enough. Let the silence grow, letting these echoes fade gently, like the last shimmer of sunlight on water or the slow retreat of tide over sand. Sleep well, traveler. You are already enough. Each word, each image, each imagined presence becomes a gentle hand resting on the shoulder of thought, easing tension, dissolving the insistence to know or solve, inviting instead the simple act of resting. Perhaps all knowledge is fragile, all civilizations ephemeral, all existence a momentary reflection on the still water of time. And yet that reflection is enough to carry comfort, to lull the mind into quiet ease, to let sleep arrive without ceremony or demand. Now, drifting further, let the motifs of salt, wings, soil, and stars merge into a singular, soothing rhythm. Let the imagination fold in on itself, repeating and softening, echoing the gentle cadence of breath until even images become optional, unnecessary. Perhaps it was. Perhaps it wasn't. Perhaps it only mattered that you allowed yourself this journey, this quiet exploration, this tender encounter with possibility. Sleep well, traveler. You are already enough. And as the night deepens, as thought softens and awareness drifts toward silence, let the last whispers of imagined civilizations, of vanished cities, of unseen minds, fold into the calm of your mind. There is nothing more to hold, nothing more to chase, only the gentle, patient unfolding of rest, the quiet descent into sleep, the release of mind and body to the tender currents that carry all things toward quietness. Perhaps, in this quiet, you touch something eternal, something unmeasured, something enough. And in that soft, infinite pause, the journey comes gently to rest, leaving only the quiet presence of being, the slow rhythm of breath, and the tender reassurance that you, in this moment, are already enough. Carrying the last echoes of thought onward, let the mind settle into the stillness that has been gently built, a quiet ocean stretching without horizon, soft and untroubled. Sleep well, traveler. Perhaps the questions that carried you here, the imagined cities beneath waves, among branches, along plains and skies, may dissolve now, folding back into silence like waves retreating from the shore, leaving only the gentle rhythm of being. You are free of need, free of searching, free to rest in the simple presence of breath and thought and the soft unfolding of night. The journey has wandered through possibilities vast and intimate, through creatures whose minds may have danced in currents, flitted on wings, or moved in silent complexity across the earth. Now, all that drifting becomes a gentle quiet. The oceans may have carried civilizations that left no stone. The skies may have held architects whose cities vanished like song in wind. The lands may have borne memories that soil and time have slowly erased. And yet, none of this diminishes the quiet wonder you carry within. Sleep well, traveler. Let the motifs that have accompanied you, salt, wings, soil, stars, fold gently into one another, weaving into a single, soft cadence that cradles the mind. Perhaps it was. Perhaps it wasn't. Perhaps it never needed to be known. Each thought that rose has now been released into the tender currents of imagination, allowed to drift, unbound, unhurried, dissolving into gentle quiet. There is no urgency here, no insistence, only the soft, infinite space of rest. You may notice the faintest impressions of imagined cities, of whispering minds, of currents, flocks, and footprints. all softened now, muted into the lull of night. Perhaps the first architects of oceans, skies, and lands have become nothing more than an echo. Yet that echo is a companion, a soft hand guiding you toward ease, toward release. Sleep well, traveler. You are already enough. There is nothing more to grasp, nothing more to solve. The questions that once stirred curiosity may now slip into stillness, allowed to rest alongside you. Imagine drifting on a calm sea, the water carrying you without demand, without direction, only gentle movement. Imagine the air above, soft with the folded wings of birds, quiet now after song. Imagine the land beneath, open and still, soil and stone holding no need for remembrance. Perhaps the universe itself sighs in this same gentle cadence, holding all possibility without expectation. Sleep well, traveler. Each word, each breath, a soft anchor into the quiet of night, a reminder that presence alone is enough. Perhaps the first civilizations were never ours to know. Perhaps they were brief, ephemeral, and already erased. Perhaps the oceans, skies, and lands carry their memory only in currents, echoes, and dust. And perhaps it matters little, for now, in this moment, there is only rest, only drifting, only the soft embrace of night folding around you. Sleep well, traveler. The world, imagined or real, does not need your understanding to be. It simply is, and so are you. The motifs of salt, wings, soil, and stars soften once more into rhythm, repeating not for understanding, but for comfort, for ease, for the gentle lull that carries thought toward silence. Perhaps it was, perhaps it wasn't. Perhaps it only matters that you allowed yourself this journey, that you explored, imagined, and now release. Sleep well, traveler. The echoes of civilizations past are now only soft vibrations in the quiet, fading into nothing, leaving you in the tender fold of your own presence. Breath follows its slow, natural rhythm. Inhale, gentle and steady. Exhale, soft and complete. With each cycle, the mind drifts further from curiosity into rest, further from wonder into calm. Perhaps the octopus, the whale, the bird, the ant, the elephant, the pre-human shadow, perhaps they all dissolve into the same calm as you, free of need, free of expectation, free of time. Sleep well, traveler. You are already enough. The night deepens, thought softens, awareness drifts, folding over itself like gentle waves, like slow clouds over quiet plains, like starlight dissolving in distant, immeasurable space. Perhaps all questions, all imaginings, all speculations, all cities are already released. Perhaps all that remains is rest. Sleep well, traveler. Drift. Dream. Safe. And now, even those words, even this gentle guidance may fade. Nothing more is required. You are cradled in quiet, carried on currents of calm. Sleep well. Drift.